Alrighty, I'll go ahead and call to order the city council meeting. Start with a roll call. McKee here, Lanterman here, Fatima, Camp
Here.
Nichols here. Perfect. Would you like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. Do we have, let's see, it looks like there's maybe a couple minor revisions from staff. Any additions or subtractions from staff?
The only revisions, Mayor, are item 6C, which items have been added, and item 8D has been updated. Other than that, no other changes.
Anything from council? Going once, going twice. Sold.
Motion to approve. Second.
Alrighty, and with the two minor revisions, to clarify, we have motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Presentations, we do have one important one, for Ken Guntner.
Yes.
Hesitate to just give him one title, because many titles, but.
Yes, Mayor, today we are honored to say thank you to someone who's been influencing the community for the last 30 years. And as you move forward, I will read the resolution that you're presenting to him. Ken, if you can please come forward and meet the mayor up front.
You wanted it behind the scenes
Well,
or what?
you know, this is kind of strange because it used to be like this.
So this is a resolution honoring.
Start right away.
This is the resolution honoring outgoing Elm Creek Watershed Commissioner Ken Gunther. Whereas Ken Gunther was appointed to the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission beginning on November 8th, 2018. And whereas Ken Gunther was elected treasurer during his sophomore year on the Elm Creek Watershed on March 11th, 2020. And whereas Ken Gunther implemented financial policy changes related to project escrow management that greatly improved the commission's operating budget. And whereas Ken Gunther advocated for the establishment of a reserve fund policy for the Elm Creek Watershed Commission. And whereas Ken Gunther advocated for the obtained grant funding for the South Fork Rush Creek Sub-Watershed Assessment Project, which was completed in 2024, that will have long-lasting benefits to water quality and natural resources here in Corcoran. And whereas Ken Gunther championed and strengthened the city of Corcoran's relationship as a member of the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission. And whereas Commissioner Gunther was chosen to end his time as commissioner with a term that expired on September 11th, 2024. And whereas the city of Corcoran recognizes his time, energy, dedication, and leadership which he's provided to the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the city of Corcoran that the city council hereby honors Ken Gunther for his distinguished service to the city of Corcoran as our Elm Creek Watershed Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I add,
Please do.
please? Ken is leaving Corcoran. That's why he's not going to be on the commission anymore. And I was the watershed commissioner that got the study for the north fork of the Rush Creek, and he got the one for the South fork of the Rush Creek. So I think you and I together did good work. But like 9 years ago, Ken called me and he said, "Hey, I'd like to have coffee with you at Caribou." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, he's the mayor. Of course I'll have coffee with him." So we had coffee and Ken said, "I really think you ought to run for city council." And I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of a muckraker and I've never run for anything." And he said, "Perfect." And so I did. And
It's a good call.
yeah, well, who knows? If you don't like me, talk to Ken.
Ken's fault.
If you do like me, talk to me. You know, he was mayor for a long time here. Eons. A lot of what we did before, and this isn't about the watershed anymore because he's moving away. He made our community be sort of like thrown together and in a haphazard fashion and put you were implementing the plan for the first time and like took and put structure around our town so it could grow in a sort of reasonable way. And there's a lot that went on that we owe to Ken that nobody really knows about because it was all done behind the scenes. And I know you're, in front of the scenes too, being the mayor, but you did a ton of stuff for our town. I moved into our town after you started being mayor, but I owe a debt of gratitude to you. A ton of people do. And I know you didn't do it for that, so that's extra meaningful. So, yeah, I appreciate all that you've done for me personally and all that you've done for our town ending as the Elm Creek watershed, which you poured your heart and soul into. And if you don't know what Ken did for Corcoran's relationship for the watershed, we're not going to spend a whole ton of time on it, but it was awesome. And all these good things about you. Your wife is actually a better person than you. So behind a good man is a good woman. And in your case, it's absolutely 100% true. So thank you for all you've done. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
How's the new place? Have you moved in yet?
Moving in starting November 11th.
Okay, good luck. Hopefully it
Yeah,
goes
good, yeah.
smoothly. Yeah. Well, come back and visit us.
We will.
Good. Good,
Cool.
good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we will move on to item 5, open forum. If we have any cards.
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any cards to come and speak on something not on the agenda.
Okay.
We did receive a card to speak on item 6C on the consent agenda. Traditionally, we do not comment on things on the consent agenda like that,
Open.
but I will leave that to your discussion and discretion.
I would think that would be, I guess, open to council on that if there was a need to pull it or not from that. I guess we probably should have done that agenda approval if there was interest, but I would think that our normal procedure would not to have comment on that.
Very well.
Fine.
I would defer to process.
Any other opinions or
Well, we already
we already did the
motion
agenda.
and approved the agenda.
True. Okay. So with that, if there's nothing else for open forum, I will move on to consent agenda, which consists of items 6A through 6K. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Motion to approve consent.
Okay,
Second.
motion to approve consent items A through K, motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. On to unfinished business. We don't have any today, so we'll move on to new business, which we have 4 or 5 items here. Public safety, start with the public safety budget presentation, which I'm assuming Matt will be given.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. You want to get the slides up, Jim?
Brian?
So again, this is very high level. You guys have the more detailed items in the packet, but wanted to kind of talk about, I guess, tonight about what are the drivers in some of the upcoming budget changes. And again, it relates back to, as it's not surprised that people are the most, obviously always the most expensive part of business in our line of work. I did enclose what you had previously seen as our org chart ending in 2024 and with the proposals ending in 2025 that Jay had previously presented. And then following that, I did a breakout, just trying to expand a little bit more on that to show a little bit more clearly where the change would lie in public safety. It looks like the conversion to PDF maybe changed some of the lines possibly a little bit. We'll see how they turned out.
Does anyone have a page number on the agenda for this?
155 or?
I knew it would be
155,
you,
there you
Jeremy.
go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, the reason that we're talking about the org chart is that's where some of the largest cost drivers are, and trying to give you a visual of how they fit in the, into the scheme of what our existing structure is. So the blue ones are the existing staff. The gold ones are the proposed staffing changes. So you see the part-time administrative assistant on the upper left. That's what we originally was a police technician position. It used to be called police technician because they had some CSO duties with it. As we've added our CSO program and that's taken off, they're really serving in a more of an administrative function. So that would be the part-time administrative assistant, trying to bring back that part-time help that we had for projects and some of the evening coverage that we try and do in the police department. The other part-time position that you'll see bottom center, community service officer. So as you know, we've transitioned to a full-time community service officer this year, and we're really trying to get that. The goal of that full-time one is to get a little bit longer term with more of a career person that knows the ins and outs of what we need done. And then this goal would be to bring back the part-time community service officer, which we often use, we successfully use as a feeder program for people who are interested in law enforcement, get them exposure to our community, get them some time in the profession. Some of our last hires, Danny, you remember Jacob, they both came through our part-time CSO program. So really trying to get our part-time CSO program back on track to really do two things: get some more evening and weekend coverage with our CSOs. They can alleviate some of the work that right now we're otherwise pulling our police officers to do. They can kind of take on some of that civilian work like fingerprinting, lockouts, some of the public assist type stuff if our officers are tied up with other things. So bring that service back, and then also trying to help have a little bit more of a feeder program for our police officers. The next position, bottom right, is the SIU detective. And actually, you can see if you take note now before we change where the SIU detective fits, and then in the upper right, the deputy director of fire. And there's a little, I think it'd be good to go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about those, since those are full-time positions. What does that mean, and what are the core functions, or what if we elected to not move forward with them, what would we be missing out on? The goal of the SIU is that we would be looking at a JPA type position, either with a neighboring special investigations unit or drug task force, trying to really look at pattern crimes, warrant arrests, narcotics, more of the proactive investigative things that our day-to-day detective is more responsive. So for instance, our day-to-day detective does child protection, adult protection, responding to death scenes, the longer term criminal investigations, where an SIU would be more of the proactive stuff, but it would also be a JPA position where we would join a group of other investigators. And what that would allow us to do is, when we have those active type investigations necessary, we would have a team of investigative folks that are doing the proactive stuff in our community. What that would also mean is that person would be working outside of our communities at times as well, as in support of that team. So,
Matt, is there another community actually approached us or
we've
had
had
conversations with who that would be?
Yes, we've had conversations about as far as SIU. I've had conversations with Plymouth PD. We don't have agreements in place. That's why it's not structured as it would have to be this. We're looking at community impact. If you'll recall, when we did the council initiative of addressing specific crime and drug related issues to retain a safe atmosphere, council goal back in, I think that was 2018. The low level drug crimes, some of the quality of life things were a significant concern then. They remain that now, but they fall somewhat below the scope of what a traditional just drug task force person would do. The hope with an SIU approach would be to do a hybrid where they can still do the community impact drug crimes, but also have a little bit broader scope of what they'll be looking at.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just a general question. Today we are not actually approving budgets for the park or the public safety or the administration and I think park has, they have a different day. So are we to listen and react, or are we to say, what is our role in hearing these conversations?
I think
Yeah, if I could clarify, Councilmember Bradama, staff really needs to hear from you. We understood that when we passed the not to exceed levy before the end of September, we still have some cuts that need made. And so if you have recommendations that of particular things that you want to see as bill payers in order to get the budget where you want it to be, this is the time when we really need that feedback. It's not a vote at this point. Then we take that feedback and incorporate it into the modified budget, which we'll bring back to you. But we really need the feedback on what sort and types of things are, don't touch those, or these are things that we would be willing to let go of, or we want to cut these things from the budget.
So
That
just,
kind of feedback.
just to be clear, are these, so, if we were doing an NCAA tournament bracket, are these like bubble things we're talking about then with respect to these positions? I assume we're not cutting officers. These are like, we're thinking about this, we need some feedback just for the public. We have a big crowd here, but also for us, like we're talking about two positions, but we're also not talking about like most of the force that we have today.
So the core services that we have grown accustomed to at this point aren't the things that we're seeking guidance on.
Yes.
We've understood your guidance that we're going to protect core services. And it's any time that we're either increasing service delivery or modifying service delivery that we need some guidance.
So is the feedback for Matt or for you?
Both.
Okay,
And my approach to it was, what are the drivers for the increase that are, that are the biggest changes? So if you were going to not have these changes occur and wanted to have the greatest impact on the reduction, these are what the biggest changes are outside of the cost of living adjustment for existing staff.
so when do we approve it?
December.
December 12th.
So that means for people at home watching and for people here, they can weigh into some of these conversations.
Truth and taxation meeting
Yes.
is on December 12th.
Really important.
Every resident should have received that notification in the quarterly newsletter.
Could you add some color, Matt, around the level of each of the crime categories that are listed under the SIU? How prevalent are these? Are we talking a handful, dozens, scores?
So they all come and go a lot. I mean, so they're all very situational that, for instance, I'm sure you saw in the news that there was a rash of organized residential burglaries to the south of us. These would be the types of things that this group would target and be proactively, looking at doing data analysis, doing kind of the stakeouts, doing, the targets, and actually doing targeted proactive policing at an investigative level as opposed to a patrol officer. So they're very situational. And then, for instance, when there's the reports of the low level narcotics sales or some of those things, a lot of times around the holidays, they'll focus on more so in our neighboring cities, retail crimes. And it really is a flex type position to, here's what we're facing today that our patrol cops can't do in their day-to-day function.
One concern that I have, maybe you can speak to this too, is if we're partnering with larger cities to share a resource and be able to deploy people where needed, do you feel like we would get at least one full-time person equivalent over the course of that year, or are we likely to have them pulled into bigger cities for most of their time?
So I think we would, because when they would be coming here, keep in mind, they'd be bringing their team of 6 or 8 people here.
Including,
So even if they're targeting work for 2 weeks, they're having the equivalent of 6 or 8 people that are working here full time. So would their majority of their calendar year be spent here? That'll remain to be seen, and how big of a team is needed for each type of investigation that they're doing, whether they're peeling off 3 people from the group or 6 people from that group that they're working jointly with. But I think there's definite value in the function that they provide, and it gives a lot of depth without having to pay for 6 or 8 people when we need it. It gives us maybe more of an entitlement to those proactive services.
If I could add to further flesh out Councilmember Bottomless question, in subsequent slides, gave each of the department heads a materiality of $20,000. So if there's a subsequent change in any line item of $20,000 or more, we're bringing that to your attention, because that's the threshold that council has to approve. any changes in our budget more than $20,000. And so that's why this brief, each of the department heads are looking at any changes in any budget line item that's more than $20,000. And then giving you an opportunity to ask questions to understand it. And then starting with our staffing, because those are our largest costs and our biggest, we can't do our services without staff.
And these are large line items that will get into the percentages and their actual, these items will get into their dollar impact in a slide or two. So do you have any other questions on the form and function of the SIU investigative position? Then before I explain or talk about the deputy director.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Matt, on that SIU, how many other communities have people already?
So,
And how big is that team?
so most of our neighboring agencies do, and it varies from agency to agency, but you know, for instance, like a Plymouth does, Maple Grove does. Other smaller communities to the north and south of us, for instance, Rogers, Medina, West Hennepin, they contribute instead of an SIU, they've contributed to drug task force positions. So as it relates to a specialty investigative person, in addition to the detective, all of our neighboring cities have that. Some of them, it's drug task force, some of them are SIU, the smaller agencies, north and south, have assigned drug task force agents. Maple Grove and Plymouth have drug task force and they also have SIU division.
But currently, right now, though, if we have an issue, we call on that group and they come here, even though we don't have an SIU person.
No, we
If
generally
there's
figure it
something-
out. I mean, if we call and said, I
It's
have,
ours, we own it.
if we called them and said, we need 2 cops to do this tomorrow, they would get us 2 cops to do that tomorrow, but they would not be doing case management, case investigation.
That's all our detective. We have one. What is that cost of that one position?
So the SIU detective, I believe,
I think I know the number, but
yeah, so the wages are gonna come in, you know, and it depends on who ends up getting assigned to that. We had for wages, I think we had it budgeted at the same pay rate as a police detective, which is base wage plus 6%. If I recall correctly, I think it was in that, let's see. I think it was in that 120,000 approximately for wages, but there's also insurance and.
yeah, no, I get all of that. I understand that.
All right, it would be just over 100. I think it's 102 to 104,000 for base wage on that.
Okay, and then as far as the deputy director of fire, we've been having that conversation since before I came on the council and stuff a few years ago. We currently have Hanover do respond, Rogers respond, Hamel respond, and
West Suburban.
West Suburban. I stated that wrong in the past, but I didn't want to do it tonight.
Yeah.
That one person would be that contact for all of those people or all of those different communities, but yet we don't have much of a plan going forward as far as what we're gonna do in our city for something here yet. Okay.
Right, and to get a little bit more explaining what it is. Our fire service work plan, which we created with following the subcommittee, talks about beginning to implement, starting to do fire inspections, which actually begins with community education. So 3 to 4 years ago, we looked about how do we start delivering on the fire service work plan? So I'm obviously the conduit with our 3 fire departments, love doing it, love our partners, want to continue with our partners. But as we got to the tactical elements saying, okay, let's organize what fire education and inspection looks like in Corcoran. When I approached Hanover Fire Department, they said, yep, happy, we'll go out to a couple businesses, we can hit 1 or 2 a month and we'll try and do, you know, but we're gonna do this format, which is different, and we can be a little bit less specific. When we went to West Suburban, they said, yep, it's gonna be a few $1,000s a month or a year. We can do more, but it's gonna look like this. It's gonna be a different form factor. When we talked to Rogers Fire Department, they said, we're at capacity. If you want to do that, you have to pay for 1 FTE for Rogers Fire Department to do it. So we have 3 different answers and 3 different ways of doing it. So as we don't have anybody in a tactical role to say, here's what our standard is, here's how we'll do it, may or may not be the right person to be doing that work, but can actually deliver and align what our services can be. That's one of our greatest challenges, is getting the same service for all of our residents that are living in different service areas. We have 3 fantastic partners. They all do business a little bit differently. So it's managing and exploring options, but also as our city is growing, what mitigation strategies are there? Whether that's looking at district lines, whether that's looking at assuming some medical services. If we are, how does that impact formula? So as we're looking at our fire service formula, if we were to be able to take some of that burden off our partners before so that their model can support it, they can start doing analysis on that and what does that mean or what does that look like? So a lot of that, as we begin to plan for the future of fire service, this isn't somebody who's going to tell the fire chief how to fight the fire when they're on scene. We have our partners, we need those partners. This is, if we have where do our facilities need to go? What does that facility need to contain? And how do we staff that with our partners or otherwise? And how do we most efficiently work with them to get the best value? So as we're seeing our contract costs go up, and will continue because of our population growth, this is meant to be one of the mitigation and service delivery, I guess, throttles on how do we find the best value for our residents and doing it.
And then last question, how much is that position roughly?
So this ends up being the first delve into personnel as a separate department with fire. So the costs are a little bit higher as it relates to, we need radios, we need other supporting stuff. So the wages end up falling similar to in the low 100,000s,
Okay.
Similar to a deputy director position, but because of personnel costs as it relates to insurance, and then training, some of those overhead things, getting it started is looking at about just over 170,000 a year.
Okay.
Jeez.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question about the, I'm gonna ask a million questions before you get to talk.
That's okay, I'm used to it.
Does Hennepin County, so pattern residential burglaries, warrant arrests, narcotic sales, construction site thefts, catalytic converter thefts, do they even prosecute it? Is it worth even trying to bring people forward and who have committed these crimes?
I would say that we are committed to making sure that we're delivering every criminal to the doorstep of our
I get it.
prosecutor.
But
we're
the
not-
patrol people can do, you're saying,
Sounds like he's on the fence, John.
yeah,
Yes or no?
so like,
No fault
a
to him.
serious question.
There's only certain things that we can control, and we want our officers doing everything they can to make sure our community's safe. What
I think
happens after they get out of the community? We don't
I think it's a
have
fair
control.
point to bring up. I think maybe the hope is that I agree that that is a concern right now. Hopefully that won't continue to be in the long term, but yeah.
I'd rather hire a prosecutor for our city and then hire actual people who will find people who, it's not that hard to look, who are committing crimes, because our crime, I've said it for 8 years, our crimes are not being prosecuted, so what's the point? We
Is
have,
that a serious thing we can do? Can we
Yeah.
have a prosecutor?
yes, we can have our own
Yes.
prosecutor for our town.
It is.
We can't for felonies, though. County attorney has jurisdiction over.
Our
that.
burglaries,
Yeah.
warrants, narcotic sales, construction site thefts,
Most
A
of
lot
them
would depend on the
Don't fall into
specifics,
felony.
but
they go.
Most of them would. So a residential burglary would be a felony. Warrant is gonna depend on the level of crime that the warrant is for. The narcotics that we're speaking of, yeah, they would be felonies because, only petty misdemeanor drug possession was marijuana, which has been legalized. The construction site thefts usually exceed the dollar value, I mean, to fall into the felony category, as do most of the value of the catalytic converters. So they do fall into that felony category, but I would go as far as saying, if it's against the law, we're going to arrest you for it as long as we can. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we can get justice for our victims, because every one of those, we're talking about the crime there.
Yeah,
As we show up, every one of them has a person behind it. So when we show up with catalytic converter theft, it doesn't make our resident feel any better that we say we're gonna do our best, but when they're without a catalytic converter and can't get to work, that's impacting their life. And we drive that home with our prosecutors to the best that we can.
yeah,
But if we don't-
hypothetically speaking, say we don't join this task force. And we say, we're not joining the task force, those people are super expensive, we're gonna hire 3 CSOs who are gonna drive around and look for people. Stealing catalytic converters. I think the outcome is the same because our stuff is not prosecuted, period. So like, you could make an argument, we want more officers forget all this. We don't need detectives because none of our stuff is prosecuted.
You
We
just
actually
the
don't need a
deterrence.
canine because none of our stuff is prosecuted, ever. So you just need people. I'm just making the argument. It's
Yeah.
frustrating.
I would say I cannot put a civilian in the midst of a crime in progress and won't. It's not, they don't have the training to do it safely.
I'm just being facetious.
Right.
It's sort of like, what's the point of having all that if at the end,
It doesn't
it doesn't do a damn thing?
brought forward.
But I think it raises a valid strategic question. Is there more value in deterrence versus capture? And where do we get the best value for the dollar?
Is this a rabbit hole I've drawn us down?
You've done a good job,
It's a
John.
good-
Or,
it's a
or
good
does
rabbit
it-
hole to
It's just
explore.
or does
think about.
this issue highlight that maybe it's just not the right time to do that? And if we're in a scenario that, it's different at that county level in terms of prosecution, that maybe it is the right time.
Could we hire a lobbyist to hang around the county attorney?
Yeah.
Go to right, Sean.
I'm sure.
We are
prosecuting
Might
that.
We have
off.
voted to leave Hennepin County.
Yeah.
So I would say, as far as these priorities, earlier this year, I said I would handle, like, I'm gonna do a fire study, I'm gonna figure all this stuff out. And I have experience in that field. I spent 12 hours at, Rogers Fire, cause I'm with North Ambulance on Saturday. And, or yesterday. And it's so overwhelming. I couldn't do it. I wanted to
It's a
do
lot.
it so bad, but
It's
I
a
couldn't
lot.
do it. And I almost think that the priority should be some sort of liaison that doesn't get paid, man, it doesn't get paid 150 grand. Like, I swear, like some person that could just communicate, could do the job we're asking.
Fire one.
Yeah, cause we're not.
We
Find
aren't that
studies
big
and,
yet,
yeah, we
in my
don't,
mind,
anyways,
Say that again, Dean?
we aren't that big yet.
all right, I'm done.
No.
We don't have a clear outline for what the deputy director of fire should do. I think it'd be silly to hire that
Mhm.
without council spending enough time to say, here's what the position is, here's what they're gonna do very specifically.
So the job description stuff would come when seeking authorization to hire. It's a matter of
Yeah.
how much do we put into the budget part of it. I think we do have a clear outline. I think as you look at the knowledge, as you talked about the complexity of it, you have to have a subject matter expert
You do.
to do it. You can't do it without a subject matter expert, and you're not going to get somebody at the policy level subject matter expert at a liaison pay grade. They're just not going to do that job. And that's the reality that we're left with. As we are looking forward, it really is a planning heavy function that we need.
There's another
Could you
variable.
fire them after a year after they planned it all up?
Well,
I wouldn't lead with that. Might be hard to fill a spot.
Yeah,
We
come
had-
work
we
for
had a
us. We're
meeting-
Great place.
We had a
for
meeting
year.
today that I think is apropos to this. The timing may not be now, but there are some things on the horizon that are gonna continue to impact not only our growing community, but the changing landscape of how fire service is delivered and what's expected in that arena. And if we don't have an expert, Matt's doing a great job of being in those meetings and advocating for us. But we need somebody that's meeting with those folks every single day, and planning our long range service. When the timing of that is, that's for you to decide. But the reality is the OSHA things that I learned about today, those expensive, these unfunded mandates coming from the federal government related to fire service and all of the things that are gonna happen are gonna be a huge bill on the horizon. And so we need to make sure that we're postured in a way to be able to navigate that. We've read up on it instead of caught on our heels. We need to be proactive. When's the timing to be proactive on that? That's for you to decide, but it's coming.
I won't talk anymore. Until the next. time.
So, and like I said, I'll get into the impacts in a slide or two. Any other questions on form and function of those two largest cost drivers?
I think what I would want to see on the fire one, I would like to see an outcome of that position existing being the ability to bend down the cost curve that we see, especially I think from Rogers and their particular model of pricing our service. Whether that means we're allocating additional parts of the city to other departments, and how do we do that without compromising service? We're spending what, $700,000 on fire service next year? So, and that goes up. I've seen it go up 10%, 20% a year. I would like to see us have a mechanism to keep that as controlled as we can. And if it takes having a person for a period of time, maybe we get to a point where we don't need somebody at that level. We can evaluate that later. But I think we need to improve our understanding of the system and how to adjust our contracts.
And that was what I intended by bullet point number 1
Yeah.
with the manage and explore options. It really is, we need that mitigation, and what would it look like if we redrew boundaries? What would it look like if we absorbed or removed call load by handling it in a different way?
Mhm.
Doing that analysis is fairly complex in making sure that it doesn't negatively impact service or relationships. We are not, you know, with our 3 fire partners, we need them, we're going to have them, and we also don't want to break them by having, as our community grows, expanding beyond what they can fulfill with either their volunteers or their staffing structures.
Chief, if I could, as a former SIU investigator and task force member, I know firsthand that there is a tendency for larger agencies to monopolize the resources of these groups. I'm wondering if you put any thought into how or what type of oversight will be necessary to make sure that other agencies are getting more of this than we are, and how do we maintain proportionality? You know, the city's buy-in for this versus, you know, the other cities.
Yeah, I've had those exact conversations. That's why I also left a little bit of flexibility in how we talk about it. In the partners that I've talked to, they were absolutely understanding of that concern. And I think we would write the JPA with those, taking in mind those reservations, that the umbrella that governed how we work together, either leaving short outs that we could seek a better partner, or if we can't come to an agreement on the front end of what that management looks like, you know, certainly that drug task force is another option that gets us that team of people that can sometimes expand their scope to a violent crime type scenario. And they have established governing boards, which includes the agency by agency representation. So I think we have some options if we can't find the structure that we want, or can't get the terms that we would want in a JPA or governance document.
Thank you. With the JPA, is there a minimum number of years that we're signing up for, or is this like an at-will relationship that you can terminate if you decide that's the right thing for?
I think we'd want options, and I think for our community, we'd want to know what this looks like and how it works for us. I think starting out, if another agency is going to be upsetting their apple cart, they'd want to know that we're going to, you know, do this for, 2 or 3 years, and then maybe it's an annual renewal after, or if it's terms different than that, then is there another benefit that we can get out of it? But I think we could, those terms would certainly be a point of consideration if we went down that road.
Thank you.
One more question, and again, we are gonna come up with a recommendation and stuff on the fire side and such. And I hate saying the word, but I'll say it, we've had some luck with consultants and such related to some of our other positions here and saving money for that. I have no idea, but is there a resource like that amongst the fire safety and stuff of somebody? I find it hard that we're gonna need a person 5 days a week.
So we did what's called a fire service planning grant. They still have the fire service planning grants. When we did the first one, the feedback they said was, let's start working on what our benchmarks are for response. There's more information, you need more structure behind it, was the feedback that we got from when we did our last study.
When was that?
That would have been, I believe, 2019. I could put together a summary for the council of the previous staff reports and the working documents that would include the study, the subcommittee, the work plan. As we began executing on the work plan, as we got to delivering on that structure and some of the deliverables, as far as how we do education inspection, as we got to those parts is where we've hit the roadblock in that we don't have the tactical manager here to get to the structure point for the next.
So
thing.
we've got a plan, but what I was looking at, is there a person that does part-time for another local community of inspections and all of these things and coordination and stuff? Is there somebody for that role, not a consultant telling us what we're lacking? You know what I'm saying?
So for instance, as I talked about West Suburban bringing on inspections, they're going through the process of getting educated.
Okay.
They're working with neighboring cities for how they do inspections, how they manage it. Now, that's one of the elements that we're trying to do, but they also don't have jurisdiction in the Rogers Fire Department because they work for West Suburban. They don't have jurisdiction in the Hanover Fire Department because they don't work for Hanover. So as we look at scope of authority, a city employee would have scope over it, or a city, if you're talking about a contracted employee. Sure, we could probably find one person that would get the expertise to set up our inspections, but they wouldn't do service model forecasting, or they wouldn't do some of the other long range plan. There's a lot of compartments that we're
Okay.
trying to meet, but I think that's, you know, from a consultant standpoint, I'm continuing to look at what those options are. The state fire marshal's office is very helpful in coming out to communities, but they do it on a per case basis. They'll say, hey, we'll come help you either get this project started,
Okay,
but they want a clear.
but you can't do something with the 3 different fire departments that we have and say, we'd really like you to follow one inspection process. We'd really like it to be one. And then you can't do that. You need somebody knowing that to put it together and then.
To say, here's what
Go
we
from
need you to do for inspection, and we're gonna maintain the record so that we have it to deliver that kind of, you know, deliver what those service expectations are, and it should be somebody with that's an expert. Now, that's still not going to alleviate, you know, for instance, Roger saying, we don't have the bandwidth, or this will have contractual obligations, but we can start weighing and mitigating what those impacts are in our approach and figure out, how do we get there?
But if we do it ourselves, then we do the Rogers regional support, we do the Hanover, we do the West Suburban. We do those things and they don't have a say on our inspection process.
We would
Is that
leave
what
that-
you're saying?
So that what that person would do is examine the options. So what they might say is, I'm going to oversee, maybe it's West Metro doing inspections, but I know what our standard is going to be. Or maybe they'll say, we're going to do it with.
Okay.
Yes, so they would administer it. They might not be the inspector depending on who the person is, or they might be the inspector depending on what the person is. They're gonna develop what the best cost benefit and service level model is for the community.
Could that be a quick win to reduce existing charges from our providers?
I think that would be the first coming in the door would be get a handle on our situation of where we're at with contracts and cost drivers as it relates to calls for service versus market value versus where districts go, and capacity and service from our partners. That is there a more effective model using our existing partners that can look at those cost drivers?
I do want to point out what I said earlier, that there is a wave of expenses coming in the
Yeah,
fire service.
Huge.
And so just don't want to set an expectation that by doing that, bringing in a position like this, that we're going to be able to mitigate and lower our costs. The costs are going to be higher by being proactive and getting someone in here that can manage these conversations and come up with these necessary strategies. That allows us to proactively respond to the changing landscape rather than reactively respond. And so we're able to do some analysis, put a plan in place. We don't have that capacity right now to do that. So we are doing a good job of, because we have good partners, taking care of the safety of the community. But the things that are going to happen as the city continues to grow and as the expectations, OSHA in particular, change, the costs are going to go up. I just wanted to talk about that. Even getting someone like this, it's not going to reduce the cost. It might reduce from the cost from as bad as it was going to be.
Yeah.
But it's not going to make it lower next
Could
year.
mitigate the increase.
Yeah, it could mitigate the decrement.
I think the hope is mitigating increase year over year by being tactical with our investments and also helping our partners so that we're not overtaxing their capacities and where our demand falls.
Mhm.
They can help both of us, hopefully. So, getting on to revenues, not not a lot that we can talk about here. So our police state aid went up, which is good, approximately $40,000. That's formulaic based on officers in seat during the time throughout the year. Another one that will be changing, but we're being conservative on the forecasting. Our police state aid training did go up this year. We're hopeful that that'll go up next year, but I think out of being conservative, we're not projecting a large increase on that one just because we want to make sure that we can meet our revenue expectations. Our agency is the grant administrator for the TZD, which is Towards Zero Deaths grant. This is pass-through money, so while you see a net gain in revenue of $169,000, we'll see an expenditure of that amount later in there. Those are the biggest changes in the revenue end of things. As we look at the individual business units, this is police. What are the big cost drivers in police? Personnel costs. The police business unit has a 22.1% increase as per in the proposed budget. 18% of that is personnel costs. What makes up that 18%? We have a contractual 4% cost of living adjustment, benefits increased. This includes that SIU position that we had talked about. So as we talk about wages and benefits, that will be roughly a quarter of those expenses would be a quarter or more of those expenses would be related to that SIU position. And then, as you'll recall, we added the other police officer position this last year, but it started halfway through the year. We have the other in the budget, the other half a year funding required to just continue paying for our existing staff. This also has the proposed part-time community service officer position in there. Next one is we did begin funding the health insurance severance payment fund. That was part of the recruitment and retention stuff on trying to keep our officers until retirement. That's a proactive funding. That funding source is overfunded today, but we want to make sure that as we set that line item in the budget, that it is continuing to fund in the future, and we don't need to make those adjustments later down the road. That kicks in, eligibility for that kicks in 2025. So next year will be the first year that officers who are eligible to retire could be eligible for that benefit. We did a 3-year phase rollout of those items. Our work comp insurance went down. Looking in the notes, we do need to bring that back up a little bit, increasing it back to 135,000. There was a miscalculation as we were doing this and looking at if we had made our quarterly, I can't remember if it's quarterly payments. We thought we had one entered but hadn't, so that will have to go back up, but we are projecting a reduction. That's based on, there were larger payouts a number of years ago with separated officers, and I think our experience rating and stuff is recovering from that, so we're hoping for a slight reduction in the work comp costs. And then the grant disbursement, that's that TZD money that we saw in the earlier slide, the offsetting revenue. If you look for that in the budget, you'd see that the TZD grant is actually $181,000, but we usually budget about $12,000 of that grant expenditure within our department. So we increased the income by 169 and then increased the output by 169, kept our TZD expenditure roughly at 12,000, but any of that grant disbursement or usage on our end is going to be dependent on use.
What is that used to provide?
So Towards Zero Death is what it used to be called Safe and Sober. So they have different waves where officers, this is state funding, can either look for impaired driving. They've done stuff on distracted driving, for instance, cell phone enforcement. They will do waves for seatbelt enforcement or targeted enforcement to reduce deaths on Minnesota roadways. It's the overall TZD, so the Towards Zero Death motto.
It's like special shifts focused on.
Yep, special shifts that are paid for with grant funding from the state.
Okay, thank you.
In the police administration business unit, again, the biggest cost driver, 26% change in that line item. Again, that's projects a 4% cost of living adjustment. The benefits increase as we look at health insurance and other benefits. And then this includes the proposed part-time administrative assistant, which was formerly the police technician position that we talked about. And then in the fire, again, we talk about the personnel costs. This would be the first personnel. So there's a lot of things on top of just a wage and salary and benefits. It goes to training, cell phone reimbursement. There's the cost of just employee administration in general is what you're seeing the additional overhead on this position for. And then you see our service contract costs went up by about 10.9% going into 2025. So as we look at the public safety totals, I did gray out in public safety, building inspection and code enforcement are technically in the public safety budget. Those are supervised by our community development director. So I believe that she'll be touching on those in her budget in the coming weeks. But to look at the percentage change where it falls in the public safety budget, those are the biggest cost drivers. And if you're looking to drive those down or mitigate those changes, your best value is going to be in those new changes that we had talked about. You can take any other questions that you have.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions? Any thoughts?
Do we want to give our recommendations now?
Sure.
While it would be nice to have, I think the investigator would be premature, I'll say it like that. As far as the fire, I'd like to see more meat and potatoes on what that's gonna give us. It's some vague information right now. And again, the cost of what's happening with the changes in the fire support system and OSHA and everything that happened, and that is a huge cost to all three of our fire departments that service us. So do we have a number on what that could be? It is a big guess.
It's a huge guess.
Right now.
OSHA hasn't finalized what the requirements will be yet. It's still working, but it will be
A lot.
substantially similar to what's been proposed. And there's speculation that fire departments could at minimum need a remodel in order to incorporate the equipment.
And to be clear, I'm not opposed to it. A lot of those are for firefighter and those folks' safety and well-being and health and stuff like that.
In theory.
It's just gonna
Yeah.
be,
In theory.
I'm there's questions, but again, past spouse of a firefighter, my wife was a firefighter in Maple Grove for 4.5 years. John, doing what you do, anybody else do that in here, thank you very much, but it might be an overshoot from OSHA, but in my mind, I'd rather have them be more safe than sorry, but I'd just like to see a little bit more numbers there if I were to say yes to that. But I think the investigative side, I don't want to get somebody in and farm somebody out. Don't know if you've thought of this, but I would like to see where we already have an investigator. Is there an option or is there something in place that we could maybe ask our current police force and stuff? Is anybody interested in going into that role and doing that in the future and internal development instead of bringing another body from outside in? Are those opportunities available for our police officers? So the way I'm thinking on stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Anyone else? Sure. I think I kind of share your concerns about, I don't dislike necessarily either of the ideas. I just don't know that it's the right time. For both. My concern on the fire would be that there's gonna be a lot of changes with the ocean, and to Jay's point, maybe we could mitigate some, but I have a feeling if we had someone in place better, but I have a feeling a lot of those are just gonna be dictated and not even to us, dictated to the departments, which then are gonna have to adjust their costs, to continue doing what they do.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna have much say on that. And then if we're adding this position on top of that, we could suddenly face a massive increase. I mean, we could already face a massive increase number, but if we adding another 200,000 plus position on top of that, it could hit us hard in a year. So maybe we're better suited waiting for the right time. Maybe it's after those changes. We see what the scale of those changes are and where we are as a city in terms of budget and just holding off on that a little bit. But again, we don't have to make that final decision tonight, but great.
I'm wondering if it's worth having a consideration for the alternate proposal, looking for a consultant to do some of that initial planning work in greater depth and not take on the long-term burden of a permanent employee, but still recognizing the potential value of how we might restructure our current service.
I'm certainly open to seeing it if we think that's something we could Good. Fine.
Noted.
Especially if there's a grant.
You're saying, like what I was saying, of somebody that takes it to the next level from our past consultant telling us what we're
Essentially, yeah.
deficient into somebody that has more.
To create a
specifics,
plan
create
for.
plans, do that. Yep, that's, thank you. Help me get my point across. Thank you very much.
Any other thoughts on this one? Yes, the same thing along the same lines, or? I'll make sure Matt and Jay have enough feedback.
I think.
Okay. And if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next item.
Right, just taking a second to get our slides here. Starting. Both done. Anybody want a good joke? I
When
know,
does it
The
go?
ice, how about the ice arena one again?
every time I tell the ice arena one, you all roll your eyes.
Get worn out on that. With the number of people we have here, Deb, how many people do we have online?
6.
Six. Thank you, all six of you, and thank you guys for sitting through this. Appreciate it very much. If you know an easier way to do this, please call every one of us. Okay,
Absolutely.
So one of the things I do want to say is that's the first time we've done that. And thank you, Matt, for being the first one in the hopper for doing this. I think it's helpful to communicate to the community how and why we're delivering the services that we're delivering. And instead of just getting a large budget item and not really understanding, talking through how we deliver the services that we do and how it's changing. And how that's going to impact their taxes and also their experiences here in the community. And so thank you for allowing us to do it this way. And it's helpful feedback for us too, to better understand. I mean, we just got, some people might say we spent a lot more time talking about that than maybe we wanted to. And in the past process, we've gone faster. I think the feedback that we just got will be invaluable to us as we're trying to make some decisions. So with that in mind, so I'm going to start with the admin department. Nalisha joined us, is doing a fantastic job leading that. And so you see our org chart. We are almost full. I am so happy to have gotten rid of a whole bunch of those hats that I was wearing and then pass them off to Nalisha since she's been here. And now as she's been growing the team, you're familiar, we added an accountant. We contracted for our finance manager. Deb is our new city clerk. Karen is our new deputy clerk. Aaron is our new communication specialist. Ryan is our new HR generalist. And we are in the process. We'll be interviewing soon for our IT manager. So thank you for your support in making this happen. For those in the community that aren't aware of this, the restructure was an impact of a cultural assessment that we received feedback from our staff, and we recognized that we really needed to provide better internal customer service, as well as external customer service. But internally, some of these things, how we take care of IT, how we handle employee benefits concerns, how we take care of our people that take care of all the services in the community is really important. And so the growth that we've made in the last 6 months and being able to do that, the feedback that I've gotten is it's been very positive steps. So thank you for supporting that. And with that, I'm going to jump in. We have 10 business units in administration. And we're going to talk about some of the things. I'm going to go into detail. I'll cover 5 of the business units, and then Alicia will cover the other 5 business units. So long and the short of it, 2 up and 2 down for our areas, specifically our personnel costs for the finance department. By choosing the contracting solution, this was brought up with the idea of outsourcing even the fire service thing. We then forego some of the benefits and other supports for staff. We've also restructured the finance department, so utility billing has now gone to public works. And so that allowed us to reduce staffing from 3 people to 1 person. So we're working a lot more efficiently. We've got a great person in the job. I do want to be transparent. We were hoping to hire a finance manager. We've talked a lot about that when we went out to market for the benefit of the community. What it would have cost us is about $30,000 more than our top salary for a finance manager. So I went out and I met with a lot of people trying to attract them. If you go on League of Minnesota Cities right now, there's at least half a dozen other communities trying to hire finance directors, to include our neighbors in Medina. We needed to provide predictable, reliable, accurate services in finance, because everything that we do it requires money. And so we're really happy with the service that we're getting. Got a good bench with Abdo. They understand us. The trigger or the impact of that is it triggered us having to change auditors. So Abdo will no longer be our auditor because they cannot do bank reconciliations and journal entries and audit us. And so that's a change in their service delivery. But that's a significant cost decrease in finance. As a result, there's an increase in our professional services contract in finance. That stands to reason exactly why. We have they're all broken down there. The finance contract, auditing services remains the same, about $50,000. We're almost done with reconciling all of our escrows. I'm super excited about that. Part of the challenge with escrows is we migrated to BSNA about 2 years ago. And so some of our older escrows were managed in really spreadsheets in an older system. And then our new processes needed to be reviewed. And so we're getting all of those escrows into our financial management system in the BSNA. It'll be a lot more user-friendly, a lot more responsive, and we're almost there. So we should finish up the project in the first quarter of 2025. Really happy that our assessment. Yes, sir.
Sorry, while you're talking about escrows, with the new system, have we decided if we're going to generate any interest income from the escrow? Or is that a question we want to answer at some point?
I will take that down as a note. So that's an important question. We're going to have to talk about our whole investment strategy as we go into the first quarter. As we flush that out to just better stewardship, as we have increased capacity that allows us to have more in-depth conversations about some of our strategies. So assessing services, super happy that we were able to offload $165,000 in assessing services through a joint agreement with the county. The county will now be providing those services at no cost.
But late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing what we can.
Yeah.
And then our legal services, it's important to note that in 2025, it will be a bargaining unit negotiation year. And so we're budgeting to ensure that we have legal services in order to do all the necessary conversations and assessment analysis to complete 2025 with a new contract as we go into 2026. Any questions about any of those things?
Do we have the information from the county that we need from them as our assessor at this point?
Not final.
Not final. Yeah.
And when were they supposed to have final numbers to us?
November 15th, I think. I'm not sure about.
Sounds
numbers. I'll get back to that question too.
I thought we were expecting final numbers like in the summer.
No,
I
it
think
was like-
final preliminary numbers,
Preliminary numbers came out in.
but they were late on that.
Yeah,
And then
but
final
But they
by,
aren't late on the final one.
not yet, but they probably will be.
Thank you.
any other questions on this? That covers my 5 business units, and I will bring that over.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you have a snapshot of the administration budget. The full-time employees' regular budget item will increase by 173,000, which is about a 60% increase. This is to reflect the full salary of the new assistant city administrator, HR generalist, and then transitioning our part-time communication specialist to a full-time position, and then transition of our administrative assistant to deputy clerk. And then our part-time employees budget item will decrease by 27,000 as our communication specialist salary is moving to the full-time budget item. And then with that, our employer paid insurance will also increase by 45,000, which is about 98%. And then for 2025, there are no elections, so we will see a decrease for temporary and seasonal employees, about 25,000. And then for central services, there will be a decrease of $382,000. This is to account for the skid steer that will be covered by the government obligation certificates that will be addressed under the long-term financial plan in 2025. And then lastly, for information technology, this budget will increase for full-time employees by 47,000 to account for the full-time IT manager. And then we will also see an increase of 30,000 for our annual renewals regarding hardware and software.
Subject to your questions, that's it for administration.
Any questions for Chair in relation?
What's the total?
On one of the earlier slides, I believe.
Well, it's by business unit, so it's difficult to give the whole administration budget up, but I will. Yeah, I will get that back to you. So I'll have to get back with you on that. Customer problem.
Is there a particular area you?
No,
Okay,
it's just
yeah.
like one's down, up 60,
Yeah.
down 100, like, it's. I mean, I could run it quickly and figure it out, but.
I think I just wore them down for you guys.
Pretty effective.
Yours was just easy to pick on, Matt. Don't.
Well, and in fairness, we've kind of
Let's go
slowly
back and
tackled this one
revisit
for
the
a while.
police deal again.
If you look at the next pages in the packet, 166 through 169 has the roll up for administrative. And it looks like administration overall is up 216.
Okay.
Central services, sorry, election is down 31. Central services is down 311. IT is up 85.
And we've kind of digested these changes a little bit more throughout the past year, 8 months. With the whole restructure and everything, so it's not too much or anything really brand new that we're looking at here. So any feedback for changes that we want brought back on the next go around of this, or when we're bringing it up in December? I don't know that there's anything that's massive that jumps out at me at this moment. Taking the lack of.
Will we have the staff to fully implement Granicus in the near future?
So good news, near future is almost here. We're
Good.
doing.
I wanted to ask that. Thank you.
When does our next training schedule for?
I think we have a training starting next week, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're just trying to get through the general election here and then we'll.
Yeah,
get right into it.
which, kind of a sidebar, but we had a pretty good turnout, it sounded like today, or they're
Yeah,
starting
we're
to,
getting about 100 people a day coming in here
awesome,
and we're voting early, so
cool,
it's been very consistent.
cool, that's great.
No drama so
Not
far?
too much. No.
Okay.
The drama will come after.
All right, well, I think,
I just did rough numbers off your summary, Jay.
Yes, sir.
This doesn't seem right.
I'll follow up. with the number.
85,000.
Are you trying math again?
I'm trying. Hey, I used my calculator on my phone for the first time.
Thank you for your help.
I tried.
I'll follow up.
I'll take the criticism.
so we're not hiring Dean for
Uneasy.
finance manager.
If there's nothing else, Mayor and Council.
Good for now,
You're moving on to,
perfect. To 8C, and actually before that, I think we made a 5-minute recess quickly, if anyone else, is that okay with everyone? Sure. Okay, we'll recess for 5 minutes, be back at, that clock's not right, so 8:15. It was There we go.
Safety.
We got a good.
That thing's gonna fly off and kill
Motion's
someone
coming.
someday. All right, we'll go into 8C, which is City Park Remaster, and JCB is gonna start.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name is Jessica Christensen-Buck. I'm the Recreation Supervisor. You guys know that at this point, but with me here tonight is Gabrielle Grindy. She's been our consultant for this project and been doing a lot of hard work with staff, as well as Steve from Stantec has been pretty heavily involved. So we've got some good people working on a project, and we want to tell you about where we're at. So I'll hand it off to her to kind of give an overview, and then I'll have a slide here or there, and then we'd be happy to take questions.
All right, good evening, thank you.
So the purpose of the meeting tonight is that we're seeking approval to move forward on design of the city park improvements project. So this is our design process. We started last fall, winter, December, January. We did a site analysis. We looked at city park, looked at what works well, what are the issues and opportunities. We did project programming in January and February, worked with city staff on that. We did concept planning in the spring, and then this project was brought to city council in the spring to get approval to move forward with schematic design. Right now, we're at the end of our schematic design process. So the remaining steps are showing the design that's needed to get through the project opening, which is projected to be next fall. This is the layout right now. This is the schematic layout showing several elements within City Park on the western side of the park that are recommended for improvement as phase 1. So there is a regional trail, which would be part of the Three Rivers Diamond Lake Regional Trail shown around the outside of the main park area. There's a large field which would be graded flat shown at number 1, where there are several soccer fields and a cricket pitch shown. Number 2 shows 6 pickleball courts, which would be part of phase 1. Yeah. Thank you. So maybe you do this one.
The purple one doesn't work well on the TVs.
Here. You might want to do this one so the audience can see.
Jeremy took my good one, so.
So number 2 shows 6 pickleball courts, which would be in the first phase, and then the future phase, which would be later in the coming years, not identified, would be 6 more pickleball courts. We're showing a large parking lot, which is over the existing plate of the current parking lot, expanded to the north, which would impact the southeastern ball field, which would be slightly reduced in size. So it would be more for youth athletics, baseball, softball. And then 10 is shown as an overflow parking area, which may be paved in the future. The parking lot we're showing right now is approximately 240 spaces. There is an opportunity to add more spaces. I can also.
I have it.
You make a good point. In the central row, we could add potentially 30 to 40 more parking spots. Number 9 in the center of the plan shows future building. So when you come in the driveway, you would be able to drop off at the future building shown at number 9. Number 7 is showing where a splash pad would be located. This is slightly depressed and grade from the parking lot and the building. And then number 6 shows a large adventure playground with 3 containers, and then there are connecting trails throughout the park. Other future phase items are tennis courts to the north and amphitheater shown at number 12. So the cost estimate, this is based on the schematic design, so these are high level numbers right now. We have estimated large buckets. You can see these are rounded numbers. The park building pavilion is the largest investment in the phase 1 park improvements at about $2.5 million. Parking lot, sanitary, water utilities, stormwater utilities are shown at the top of the list there. And then the playground is about 900,000, splash pad 800,000. We're recommending a recirculating system for that, which has a higher cost in the short term and capital investments, but shorter cost overall. We're showing pickleball courts at about 450,000, and then the paved plazas, trails, so concrete, bituminous, park amenities and furnishings, landscaping, trees and boulders, And then a turn lane, which is required by the county on County Road 50, that's at almost $500,000. So the subtotal of all of these elements is about $7.5 million. And then we are showing a 20% mobilization and project contingency cost on top of that with the design and engineering. So total investment for what we're showing right now is almost 10 million. So some of the major investments, the pieces of the park that we feel are of primary importance, based on the work that's gone into this park for the past few years, is the building. The building we're showing, the current concept is about 3,400 square feet. There is a large main gathering area that has capacity for 100 people with the opportunity to split the room so that it could be used for 2 different uses at one time. There's an entrance, so that allows doorways into each space if it is split into 2 spaces. There's a catering kitchen. There are 4 restrooms, 2 accessible from the exterior of the building, 2 accessible from the interior, and then a large mechanical storage space. And then there's a couple images showing the renderings, the model of what the building could look like. The playground is another primary importance feature for this park improvement project. So we're showing approximately 14,000 square foot playground. So this is larger than the existing playground at the park today, which is about 10,000 square feet. So we are showing 3 containers. There is the possibility to have some alternates. We've talked about this 3rd container being an alternate or potentially coming up. This would still allow a large 5 to 12-year-old play area and a 2 to 5-year-old play area. The splash pad is almost 3,000 square feet. It shows a variety of above ground and surface jets, and it has some seating around the edges. And then again, it is a little bit lower than the parking lot and the building to allow for some separation and vegetation around it. So that in the winter, when it's not being used as a splash pad, it doesn't impact people who are going into the building. They're not walking through it. So we have identified some alternate items as part of this plan. The regional trail is identified at almost $1 million investment. It's almost a mile stretch of trail through the park. And so we have been meeting with Three Rivers Park District, and they have been a good partner. They are working on their budgeting tonight, actually, at their board meeting, but they have identified preliminarily to put $500,000 in their budget for next year and $500,000 for 2026. So there's a possibility that we could include rough grading of the trail next year and then do the paving at a later time when that funding is available from Three Rivers. So they will reimburse that full cost of the trail development. Some other alternate items we've identified are shelter behind the building. We're identifying a patio for picnic areas, and we're identifying a shelter over that as an alternate item. We've identified some additional storage, which has been desired by operations and maintenance staff in the city. So those will be alternate items. Also, irrigation of the fields and field lighting is alternate. So at the bottom, you can see some of the detail of the regional trail cost. This diagram highlights some of those alternate items in purple. So you can see the regional trail around the edge of the park, some of the trails through the middle, the trails, this T-shaped trail that goes through the ball fields right now. It is class 5, but we've identified paving that with bituminous to make it more accessible as an alternate item. The picnic shelter patio behind the building is an alternate item. And then some of those field improvements, irrigation and lighting.
Additionally, while we have done a decent amount of community engagement efforts, getting more feedback from the community would be preferred as we would move forward, just because things like themes and what kind of sprayers do you want in a splash pad is more of a specialty that I would like to hear from the community to get kind of their feedback and what they're looking for out of the amenity. Proposed as part of DD is an open house before the Parks and Trails meeting in November, so November 21st. From 5:30 to 6:30, it would be an open house setting, allow people to come in. But if they wanted to provide feedback in an in-person fashion, they could do that with staff or some of the commissioners. In addition to that, we would also have an online survey running from the 1st of November through the 22nd. Provide that option for people who maybe can't make it in person or prefer to have those virtual conversations, what that might be more comfortable.
Mr. Mayor.
Mhm.
I wanted to take just a minute to recognize both you along with everybody that's on the parks. The vetting that you guys have done to get to this point is huge. I know I attended the one meeting in person and just sitting and listening to everybody and their thoughts and such. We've got a great representative group on that on the Parks Commission. Kudos to every one of you guys. But I do like the mindset of doing an open house and see what else comes. So, gosh, some of the stuff that you flipped and changed and done and got to this point, rock stars. Thank you guys very much.
And I would like to echo, the commission has been putting a lot of time and effort and thought into this and really honed in on the layout in a way that they and staff feel works well together. But I'll let Gabby take it back over with design.
Great job. Thank you.
So this slide highlights our design and engineering fees. Several of the top items from here up are investments that have already been made by the city. So we've done a lot of work on site analysis with the survey, the wetland delineation, soil borings, civil with Stantec, architecture from Ortel Architects, and then landscape architecture has all been invested in. So we're asking tonight for, I think it's 490, and which would cover the design development and construction documents and get through the bidding process. And then we have estimated construction administration, which would be the time to administer the construction next summer and fall. So the total estimated design fees for this process is around $840,000. And now the fun part, we have lots of great renderings. It was a little dark, but this is showing what the full build out of the park would look like. So the regional trail we're showing coming in at the driveway as the crossing of Highway 50 has not yet been identified. This is showing the parking lot, the overflow parking area. Might not be that many trees in there. The building you can see there with the drop off area, and then behind that the splash pad and playground. This is looking a little closer at the playground, the 3 containers, the splash pad. This facility right here would house the mechanicals for the splash pad, and there's that potential where you can see this block here for the additional storage if that is desired. So this is the container with the zip lines that we talked about with the Park Commission as a potential alternate item if we want to reduce some costs on the playground investment.
I had a question that I passed to staff after reviewing the packet. The poured surface areas within the individual play containers. My understanding is those are relatively expensive. What could we do in terms of additional play features if we went with a different surface? I understand we need stabilizers for the sloped surfaces, but where it's flat.
So the tan, correct me if I'm wrong, is wood chips shown on the plan. So it's really just like the green pathways in between. So it provides that accessible route kind of in between the different play structures. We could eliminate that. Technically ADA compliance would be wood chips. So we could go that route. I think you're right though, that hillside probably needs something a little more than the wood chips because otherwise that is a maintenance nightmare. I think Kevin could speak to that, but we tried to eliminate it as much as we could while still kind of highlighting that accessible piece. Or higher accessible piece.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
wood chips are okay, ADA
Engineering
compliant and everything?
Yeah.
But then again, the cost of redoing them year after year and such. Okay. What was the material that you're planning or wanting to put down now?
So the tan would be those wood chips or that engineered wood fiber, and then the green trails, and then the hillside would be poured in place. It's like a rubber surfacing.
Smooth, not loose.
Correct,
Okay.
but it is a very
Thanks.
big cost difference.
Big.
We can have durability issues too.
Yep.
Do we have any idea as to who's going to be using this? Is this
I'm
Corcoran
coming.
residents,
I'll be there.
outside people? Like, are we paying for a great playground that other people are coming in? And the only reason I raise that is because we're, the last I hear, we're thinking about raising taxes. And I'm just concerned about this if our residents are not the primary users. Has there been a usage study?
Not to my knowledge.
I would think the usage generally would be the same like the same targeted toward the same people that our current park is. It's just, that's a growing number of people and existing park has continued to age.
And
But I
I
don't
will
know
say
to be
this,
a
as we
vastly
continue
different
to look at like costs associated with everything. If we were to rent out amenities too, I mean, that's much the playground and the splash pad, but the building, we do generally charge different rates for resident versus non-resident for rec programming. So I would say that would probably be a vision for the future moving forward too. But as far as the playground goes, I would like to assume that we get a lot of use from Corcoran residents, a nice new playground. Last newest one was in Flower Park in 2018. And that's the only other playground in the city aside from the one at City Park that the city owns.
And to build on what Jessica's saying, it's important to note that the splash pad idea was generated out of a donation from the J.C.'s in trying to respond to an interest in the community to have that kind of amenity, and they donated $100,000 for that. And then similarly, the playground, there's a family in the community that has committed to a significant donation in honor of their daughter.
And actually, they aren't even residents here, and they're trying to donate money towards our park. So in the same regard, we might have people who aren't residents that are trying to use it. But what came of that is a potential donation from a family that doesn't live here. So I mean, there's positives and negatives on either side, right?
No, I get that. I'm hesitant to support an $800,000 splash pad and turn around and ask residents for even more money in this economy.
I will say the splash pad, the playground, the building, and the pickleball courts were all shown as very high wanted items in the community by residents. So I would say the vision is that they would use it based on the fact that they said that. And then on top of that, we could do that engagement survey and get more information if that would make you more comfortable, or if there's a different route you want us to go, definitely.
The park fund though, how much of that goes into this? We have to determine that. What is our current funding in our park?
$5,204,043.21.
So we're coming
As of
up
this morning.
short. If this were all to happen, we'd be coming up 5 million short.
with the note. that
We
we
have
two other
roughly
parks to do too.
$750,600 from other sources, $500,000 in CPF dollars that came from the federal government, $100,000 that's been committed by J.C.'s, $45,000 from the Hanover Association, 5.6 thousand from the Corcoran Association, and roughly 100,000 from a neighboring family. We also have some commitments.
We've got to do Bellwether, we've got to do
Correct.
Tavera.
Rivera.
So with the 5.2 and then the 750.6, we currently in all of our park development capability have roughly $6 million. Which leaves us roughly $4 million short just for this project,
to do
plus
this.
Bellwether and Tavera projects on the horizon.
If I could just add, because you said that, a lot of people have indicated that they wanted this. I wonder if we ask them, you can have this, or you can keep $1,000 of your tax money.
I
You know,
think you can
because-
play that game with a lot of things, right?
Well,
So
but I'm just saying,
it's a good
there are a lot of things that I want too. But then when it comes to paying for it, so I just, I'm very hesitant to spend money when we're asking, residents to reach into their pocket even more in this
Well,
economy.
We wouldn't necessarily be for this. That would be dependent on the
No.
timing we pull with it.
No, well, maybe, but what I'm saying, generally, we're looking at asking for tax increase.
I don't know that that's.
So,
accurate.
so we do have to have a conversation, but first, I think it's important to, with the time and energy that's been invested, confirm or deny if council wants to move in this direction with this type of strategy. And then with that, then we have to talk about how we finance this strategy. We currently have a financing shortfall. There's mechanisms that we can use. One of those is time. So we do have additional development that's happening. More park development dollars will be coming in the community over time. That's a strategy that we could use. We could potentially work to find sponsors. We've got generous sponsors that have already shown up with some money. There might be the opportunity there. If we were to your point, say, is this of value to you? Would you like to help us go there? That's been successful in many communities. That's how we got an accessible playground in Shakopee, local business and local residents. We had a significant multi-million-dollar shortfall. They helped us meet that shortfall with donations because the Park Development Fund didn't need it. So there's lots of strategies. First, we have to talk about, is this the design that we want to go forward with? And then we can talk about how to achieve that design and what sort of timeline to achieve it.
Did they buy pavers from Shakopee with their name on it?
They didn't. We did a really cool sign and they got their little logo on it. And then some families did do benches, like there's a lot of different, it was multi-strata solution.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. John?
They're just saying lots of tiers for.
Yeah.
people involved.
Naming rights on the building, something.
That's something you can explore too.
Did the bank do that in Rogers, their community center? It's a
Yeah.
21st century bank.
Elk River has facilities and things on their ice arena. It's kind of confusing for an ice arena, but it works. It helped pay for it.
So tonight, can I clarify?
Furniture and things, sorry. Furniture.
Can I clarify what we're doing actually?
Please do.
now? So, well, I'm glad you're here, Tom, because Tom has been on parks for 25 years. And like when I first met him, he says the legacy that we leave is the parks, you know? And I think it's important. We also just did do a study on the finances for our town. And it's not easy to afford everything we want, and it's challenging. And then we look at like, we got a lot of stuff. And you know, where do you pull money from without killing everybody in taxes? It's really hard. So I have two questions. One is, and it's kind of for you guys, thanks for all this work. This is awesome. I like it.
We might have cut them short on their presentation.
They got more
Sorry.
cool pictures.
Pictures at the end specifically because I thought,
Oh, then
usually Counselor Bond wanted to.
You knew we were gonna stream, we were gonna do
We got-
it, well, didn't you?
yeah, they're up.
They're in your.
I actually did look at them, so, it's really important to do that. We're running out of space and it's cool to have this, but it's not always easy to do cool stuff. So the question I would have is, you're asking for us, I believe, to spend some money on getting this all going. And then,
Continue to design, yeah.
yeah, and then, so that I think is a vote we take. And then there's a question of like, I see in our budget next year, it's 10 million bucks. I believe is in our budget, or maybe the next year, whatever. And then we also want a new building for here. And I'm wondering if there's staging that can be done. And I know you guys are antsy and excited to get it done. We are too, but is there a way to stage it? And if we say, yeah, let's vote yes tonight. And then when we actually go fund the thing,
So we can see what's there.
like if we spend, let's $600,000 tonight.
Mhm.
And then we decide to stage it, is some of that money, I'll just say pissed away because we didn't do it all right away? Like, is some of,
Or does what we approve tonight, can that,
for last 4
Right.
years or whatever till we pay for this thing? Because just keep in mind, and I know you guys know this, I think there's like 40 more acres that isn't in the plan. that's connected onto the park too. And like that, so this isn't it, there's more to come. So if we chunk it out, I just wanna make sure if we say yeah to tonight, that if we decide to stage it, then we're not just pissing away money, cause it won't actually go to
Right.
something we're gonna do in 4 years.
I guess my follow-up would be, if we approved what the request is tonight, does that change like the ability to go forward at either, if it's next year, if we have the money in the park dedication fund for it, or to push that out another year, or to start some of it, is this ask current that's on the table right now work that needs to be done at the get-go regardless? Or does that make sense what I'm getting at?
Yeah, there is the opportunity that we can phase this plan that we are showing as we continue to design, we can value engineer and look at tightening some of the spacing and looking at those surfaces and materials and furnishings to potentially reduce the overall cost if there is a number that we are.
Well, my concern is just, I like the design, I like this plan. If we had, $10 million in park dedication, I would probably vote to approve it tonight. But we don't have, we have about half of that and 2 other parks to address in some capacity. So I just don't know what if it's beneficial to hold off on this approval until we figure that out, or to do this approval and then hold off on actually going forward with construction until we have the money to do either a big phase of that or the entirety of that or whatever it may be.
Mr. Mayor, there's another consequence that I do want to point out here, is that some of our donors have been very patiently waiting
Mhm.
for a significant amount of time. So that's one piece.
Yep.
And so we owe them an explanation, or at least a discussion if we choose to delay. And they may choose to request their funding back. Might be a consequence, but that's a legitimate concern that we need to address. Another one is, we do have the CPF dollars that we have accepted, and we have a timeline that we need to spend them.
And the Hennepin County.
And the Hennepin County Youth Sports. So there are dollars we have to spend. There's some that folks have committed that have been waiting for a significant amount of time, that if we choose not to go forward, we have to have a conversation with them to ensure they still want that to happen. The reality is we don't have enough money to do all of it right now, so we have to make some choices.
Yeah, I would say in addition to donors getting antsy, I would say residents are also a bit antsy, because we've been accumulating park dedication funds for a long time. We built one half-hearted park, no offense.
It was the first, it was a learning
I like
experience.
that park. I go to it all the time with my kids. Evie wants to go there every time we go for a walk, but
It's got a
very
new,
limited
it's got a
in
new
its
bike
amenities.
rack.
It's got a bike rack. Thank you for that.
It's got more than that. Quit your whining, for gosh sake.
I missed you at the wonderful event.
So my point is, we've been accumulating park dedication funds, and inflation is rising along with. So many of the funds that we collected under earlier nexuses with lower park dedication values per home, we're losing purchasing power the longer we fail to do something with that money. So I think we need to figure out, I want to build something next year, whether it's this, whether it's something in Bellwether and something in Tavera. I don't think we can continue as good stewards to let the money that's been dedicated to parks sit unused.
Clear. Valid point. I guess my concern is, like I said, I like this plan. I would like to say yes to it right now, but the money's not there to do it. So I don't know what the decision.
So as Jay set us up, his first question was, is this a plan that we would like to see? And then treat funding as a follow-on conversation. So I would be open if we can find other ways to fundraise for it, to do it over a 3-year stage, something like that.
But I guess that's my question. if we approve this tonight as proposed, can we figure that out after the fact? Or no?
You can choose to do that.
Well, we are looking for input tonight on the elements in the plan.
Mhm.
So we've identified what we thought as the top priorities, the building, the splash pad, the playground. If there are others, you know, the pickleball courts could come up as an alternate earlier. Or we could reduce the parking. Or there are some other options that to get to a smaller project. But if you want us to deliver a project next year, we need to keep working on this. To get it.
And I hear you, but wouldn't it make sense to figure out what we're willing to spend and then pick out what it's going to look like? It's kind of like going onto a car lot, picking out the nicest car. And then, gosh, you know, how am I gonna pay for this? Maybe you figure out what your budget is, what you can afford. And then kind of designing within that budget.
And I think that's
So
part of the question tonight.
I'm just
Yeah.
concerned tonight that we have it backwards.
Yeah, I think part of the question is this the overall budget that we want? I think we can get there as a matter of when. I mean, we know that park dedication, absent the, market drastically changing, is going to go up. There are some things that are in phases that we know, Hope is an example that future phases are likely to come in the next year or two that will add another million plus to park dedication. So there are things that we can count on coming in. We just don't know exactly when, and the full extent of that. So to me, is this the project we want to go forward with at some point? We just have to wait for that budget, or do we want to scale it back to try to make that sooner?
To piggyback off of something that was alluded to, and that's the decreasing of purchasing power. It's important to note that when this concept originally was delivered, I think in 2018, 2019, with a $7 million budget roughly, it's not really that unreasonable that here we are in 2024. And now I just want to point that out when you talk about, so by delaying the point that was made, it's going to go up. It's not going to get cheaper. And also the point that was made, the money that we've collected, longer that we wait to invest it into our park system, we are losing purchasing power, because the equation has changed for what we're collecting today versus what was collected in 2018.
I don't know about that, but that's a different conversation for a different day. I don't agree with that, but that's a finance and economics question.
$5,000. Because Jessica redid the Park Nexus back in 2022, 2023. And we did see non-trivial increases in per unit park dedication fees.
Yeah. So tonight, do we vote on this? I like it.
That's what I'm, yeah.
Can we say, yes, this is the plan, and then we
figured out how to pay for it over time.
gotta kiss the
Tom?
ring.
Please do, yeah. If you'd like to come up.
Oh,
Perfect.
he can walk.
Look at that.
there.
Look at that service.
He's not that old.
Here, let's time him.
Tom Anderson, 22385 Rush Creek Drive, member of the Parks and Trails Commission. This is phase one. I mean, we have that property and we have sketches, domes and all sorts of things that we would love to do before I die. And so this is kind of scaled back to say, what can we do? Our understanding was that we should come up with a design and then do exactly what we're doing, giving it to you, and then you will look at it and say, how does the money work? I grew up in Minneapolis, a long time ago, when I played football at Pershing Field in southwest Minneapolis. The field house was a WPA building made out of wood. It was painted kind of drab green, and it was about worn out. In the 70s, they upgraded to some really dreary cinder block buildings, which are still there, and they were dark and they were ugly, and I don't know how they managed to do it. What we were trying to do is do something. We weren't honestly, really not trying to compete with our neighbors to the east. It was just a different city. We really were aiming at something that was really good for Corcoran. That sort of fit in with the way Corcoran does stuff. Modest. It's hard to believe that a $10 million project is modest, but.
It's a lot of infrastructure.
But that's just kind of the way things have worked. It's also gonna last 40 years. And if we design something that is inadequate, just barely adequate now, in 40 years, we're gonna regret that. We'll regret it the whole time we've got it. So it is that balance, absolutely, between the money we've got, the money we can spend, and what we are gonna do over the next 30, 40 years while we're living with that building. For sure, we're gonna build a field house. We wanna build one that will be usable and suitable and good in 40 years. That's really hard to do. You know, a lot of modern construction, well, from 20 years ago, it's got no EV ports. It just barely has enough outlets to plug things into. You know, the energy efficiency is down because it was cheaper to build it without good energy efficiency. So we want to build it right so that it stands the test of time. So, but you're doing exactly what we want you to do. We scaled back things some. I have to admit, designing a park was not really my specialty, but there were some, that's why we have several members on the board. A lot of those folks got really into it, looked at it. Is this something that really will suit the community? And I think we're pretty happy with it. I think the design of particularly the play areas, you know, for being rather modest by modern standards. This is not Disney World. It's not, you know, it really is not. Is really pretty wonderful. So I think we've got some really good stuff. And it is expensive, there's no doubt. If we do some of it, you know, I will settle for some. We'll get what we can get. And but just know that if we don't get it now, it'll be a lot more expensive later. And then we have to still figure it out. So anyway, that's sort of where we were. We want your feedback. We want you to tell us what you want us to do. If it's the money, then we'll work best to give exactly the best thing for Corcoran we can do with the budget that we really have. So
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
And just off that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say yes to the vision, the plan. Yes, but also go and be responsible. How much park dedication needs to go to Bellwether? How much park dedication needs to go to Trevera? Yeah, and then analyze and make sure we have spent what the right amount is on Wildflower. That makes sense? Am I saying it right?
Well, are you saying like the money that comes in, a certain amount of that has to be allocated? Because that's.
I'm asking, I'm saying it very vaguely, just
Okay.
to open it up. We've got this much. How much should we spend? Is there a recommendation for Bellwether? Long time ago, that was going to be an open space park.
There is, no, that's
And-
two separate. There is an open space and a neighborhood.
In a neighborhood park. So what are those numbers? And then what is the number in Trevera? And then do we need to spend more to make Jeremy happy and Wildflower? I don't think we could spend the whole damn budget on that. He would still wouldn't be happy.
Not if it wasn't a shade structure.
Not asking for much.
We could put glass tunnels down the sidewalks and all of it, and he wouldn't be happy. Anyhow, I'm joking. But you see what I'm saying? We've got those three responsibilities, and then this one, what can we do in phase one? Build the building, build the parking lot, and stop. We haven't done anything to ask. We've got so many construction companies, asphalt companies around here, all of those things. What kind of donations can we get that way? I mean, that's where a lot of communities build these things from, of what can you do to support it? I mean,
So-
we're talking full retail and everything right
To
now.
build off of that, before I forget the point, is the appropriate, if that's what we want to do, is the appropriate way to do that, approving this and figuring that out after, or holding off on this to figure that out?
Can we make a motion approving the design and then ask them to come back with some hypothetical spends
options.
on if we want to phase it over 3 I'll just make a motion, and I don't know if this is technically the correct. I want to make a motion on what we would need if we ask them to phase it, like right now, it looks like we spend it over a year. Ask them to come up with a plan, a 3-year phase. And what we would need to spend today, if it would, let's pretend our spend today is $300,000. And that's assuming it gets built tomorrow. It's not, for the record. But say it's gonna be a 3-year plan, what would we need to spend today? Could we break that 300,000 into 3 chunks, or does it, like,
Yeah.
if we like your plan and we like stuff about it and we're struggling with the budget, can we ask you to come back with a spending plan over 3 years? And would it be different? That would, is that a motion?
Now you're in trouble.
Before we
Right
get to a
now,
motion, if I could,
Steve
Mayor, we
did.
have 2 things. One, I think Steve can address, that's kind of a technical question. And then also, I was negligent. We do have a resident that actually filled out a comment card on this. And I want to make sure that we don't miss her. But I'd like Steve to address your question first.
So I just want to, what we're at tonight is moving to DD and CD. And so what those are is we would bring back a DD, which is bringing back 90% set of plans. So we're putting this park plan together, bringing that back and saying, here's actually what it is, an actual cost. You're not spending the construction dollars now, right? You're just committing to refining the plan. So we know what the construction costs are. We have a lot better idea. And one option we have here, similar like when we did the water treatment plant, is saying, we can bid this project with alternates. So remember, we did the water treatment plant, we said, are we getting value from the third cell? Let's look at bidding. This project could be designed as a holistic park. And there's certain elements here that we could try to bid alternates if you gave us guidance saying, we're unsure about, we get to that 90% that we talked about and say, look, these costs, I'm not really sure this is worth the value.
I guess I would like
They
to,
could be bid as alternates, and that's where you talk about phasing of, you could vote down no to an alternate, for example, pickleball courts, just to throw something up there that's easy. Those could be done with the later phase, if that's what you're talking about, but we don't know.
that's what I would
refined costs
like.
Getting there without having a further design. Right now, we're designing from 30,000 feet
Yeah.
and getting to, but when you talked at the beginning about, are we wasting money? You're wasting money if the plan changes. And so if you want to design it now, and then put it on the back shelf and then completely change it, that's when the costs get re-spent.
We voted to hire a consultant. I designed my own big scape at my house, but I can't design a park, so that's why we hired people. So I'm
So,
like you, I couldn't design this thing.
yeah. No, me
So
neither.
we're liking it.
I would like I like that idea of breaking it into as many alternates as possible, because to me, most of these, like I said, I like the general plan. To me, it's not, do I want this in the park eventually or not? It's, do we do this part of it next year, or do we do it in 2 years? Do we do it in 3 years?
So can I make an add-on suggestion to that? I like
Sure.
where you're going. I feel like if we have too many things as alternates, you lose economies of scale and all the alternates end up costing
Getting
more.
Yeah,
Maybe it would be good to try to bring it back to the Parks and Trails. We approve design. We ask Parks and Trails to determine, okay, if you had $4 million for this, or you had $6 million for this, what would you do at different spend levels? And then we can bid it in such a way that we can try to capture economies of scale at each of those levels.
If I could build on that, I think it would be helpful for staff to have a conversation to the point that was made by Councilmember Barrenkamp. What would be a rough guesstimate of what these other commitments that we have?
that'd be huge.
In order for us to nail down, all right, we would set aside, earmark this for this project, this for this project. This gives us as a baseline project for this, which then allows us to communicate what we're capable of accomplishing with this, understanding that as development continues, more park development dollars are going to come in. And so, to the point the mayor made, we're expecting another $1 million within the next 12 to 18 months. So that part, I don't want to miss our resident, Mr. Mayor,
Agreed.
who submitted a card.
Come on up.
Kudos to you I did notice that we have all kinds of farm stuff in there. And I asked for that in every project. I love it. So thank you.
Don't know if there's another name, but, or what would you?
Get on the building.
Yes, yes.
I can find you a weather vane sign.
Okay, Catherine Drivas, 6747 Old Sturbridge Drive. I've been a resident for 38 years. And I'm willing to have, put another $1,000 in off my taxes. I don't have grandchildren, and if I did, they'd be living in Sweden. So, you know, not likely to use, but I have a lot of neighbors with a lot of young kids who would love to have this kind of park. And you look at Corcoran, we have 5 school districts. And now with all these PUDs coming in, there is nowhere to bring everybody central in Corcoran. And unless you want to count the Stanchion Bar. So.
Well, we like that too.
We
That's a
do
good
like
place.
that.
Guns and butter.
But,
place.
you know, for children.
A little less
So
than under 21.
Need a place for community building and a place to bring residents together. I think we don't want to scrimp on the building. I worked in Rogers in the school. I've been to countless graduation parties at the big building. And so I have a sense of how that works, and I can see that working in Corcoran, especially for the Rockford school people that are on this end of Corcoran, because every Rockford graduation party brings the entire class. They just go, class comes, one party, they all go to the next party, they all go to the next party. But I can see them utilizing this building. I can see Jessica having programming there. Because right now we have no place to have programming for exercise classes, meetings. I can see people.
Gun training.
Right,
Big one.
exactly.
Guns and butter.
I don't want to do that next to the playground either, but.
I can see people, you know, you renting this building for family reunion. Things like that. So I don't want to see scrimping on the building. You know, maybe, I don't know, we like our gravel in Corcoran, maybe we don't need to pave parking lots, you know? That's something, but I just see more and more uses for having this as a central place. You know, we don't have a central downtown, we don't have anything like that. And I think we need to get people in Corcoran together so that people just aren't huddling in their own neighborhoods or with their own, I mean, it's very easy to do with their own school districts, with their own friends. Let's make this something good. And, you know, I'm willing, I just turned my social security on. I'm willing to give, you know, part of that check towards something like this. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Mayor and Council, the request from staff would be kind of like what Steve was saying, they're clarifying the design. Would then allow us to move forward with the next step that I heard everybody saying pretty clearly. Staff can come back and look at our competing obligations and propose with present available funds some sort of scope with this first step. But the big ask is clarifying, is this what we want for the community of Corcoran? A lot of work's gone into it to envision it, to kind of flush it out. But if it is, we have to get into the devils in the details to figure out how we do this. And then we can look at our checkbook and see what can we do today.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I'll do my best here. Hang on, everybody. Make a motion that we recommend approval of the schematic diagram with specific edits and approval to proceed with design development and construction documents, including Jay's dissertation before what I just said. Is that, who's ever taken notes, are you able to come up with that? Deb, you're grabbing your head, I'm sorry.
I'll follow the video.
I just,
Is better, I think bigger question is the staff, are you able to
he said it
interpret
very
that
well.
as the follow-up?
What I heard was design, construction documents and clarification of a budget. Is that accurate?
Generally.
Cliff note version?
Including the additional parks.
Yeah, include the full scope of our obligations.
That's what he said, the full scope of other obligations, which is the other parts,
So we have,
excluding revision.
yep,
As we proceed to look at the other parks, are you looking at that being entirely internal? Are you looking at involving consultant? Just because truthfully, I want to help develop these parks, but I also don't know
What was
what
our-
people want in those parks. I don't know what the cost would be.
What was our plan for those
We
parts?
had concepts for Tavera that were
Yep.
discussed when Tavera got approved. There was Parks and Trail series of meetings on it.
There was a trail.
There was a trail, there was a discussion about like a basketball court and a play area.
there was a concept that came in with the development,
Yeah.
but I don't know that that's ever.
That wasn't anything from the city.
If I could make a suggestion regarding that, we probably have an opportunity for some public engagement in order to get some feedback with each of those neighborhoods. That would probably be a good first step.
I would imagine we do a similar process to what we did for Wildflower in terms of it being internal.
That was right.
Okay, but.
I
but it
can
was-
help you.
Look back though.
But I mean, in terms of, I don't know that we need to consult the whole thing out. I think it's a much smaller, scale project, or both of them are, that we could figure out, once we figure out what amenities the neighborhoods, the area the city wants. I don't know that.
If we find that we're exceeding our capacity, we'll come back and
Yeah.
request
Yeah,
permission in order to leverage park dedication dollars in order to flush out the details. As Councilmember Bottom has said, we are not landscape architects or designers, but we can work with the community to figure out what the community wants and then take it to the next level later.
because those are more, we're looking at the scale of a playground and maybe a court of some sort. And how, how does that arrange? How is there some minimal parking? But there's not $4 million of infrastructure involved. Hopefully.
So I think we did capture
How'd they
the
do?
motion.
They do all right,
Second.
about as vague as.
Yeah, we
could
got a
be.
motion and a second, and we think the clarity from staff on the motion.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Are we
Any-
also getting bids at this time, or is that a later action? Okay.
No bids.
Any further discussion? Okay. I just actually looked at Jeremy at that point, but I'm assuming no one else is jumping out. Okay, then, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
4-1. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for putting up with us, you guys.
Thank you.
You almost turned, what?
Off the mic.
Oh. Okay. On to item 8D, which is certifying delinquent fees to Hennepin County.
Page 252, if anybody's reading along.
Actually, thank you. That's very helpful for me.
Which page, Dean?
252.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, you can, although I have one question. Yeah, so actually, no, you can't.
You have to
Yeah.
hold a public
We
hearing?
do have to hold a public hearing. Can we do both of these together in one public hearing and one motion afterwards potentially? Or do we need to have two separate public hearings? James?
He cringed a little bit.
I'm sorry.
So there's two, right? There's two different sets of delinquent fees that we're looking at. Can we combine that into one public hearing, or do they need to be separate?
You're talking about, there's just the sewer and water utility fees now. That was a revision.
Oh,
No,
okay.
they gotta be
So
separate.
it's just the utility. bill.
Oh, well then never mind. Okay, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Not all at
Motion
once.
to close public hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Motion to approve the
resolution.
resolution certifying the 2024 delinquent water and sewer utility fees to Hennepin County Auditor for collection in 2025.
Second.
And to clarify, that's resolution 2024-112 and 113.
This
Yeah,
one,
this
well,
Just one.
That was the change. Okay, thank you.
this one.
Thank you.
Come on, Mayor.
I'm
You're supposed
sorry,
to-
I'm still on Guam time. I'm all messed up. Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
On to 8E.
Can I make a motion?
Um,
No, it's not a motion.
no,
We do need feedback
Yep,
on
there's
this
a
one.
couple of things we need.
go for it.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, the current recycling contract with Republic Services is set to expire on December 31st of this year. Staff has met with Republic Services representatives to discuss options for a contract renewal. And the contract renewal price is quoted at $6.99 per month per residential dwelling. The current contract price is $4.82 per month per residential dwelling, and the city is currently paying 39 cents per residential dwelling to Republic Services per month. Does the city want to, so first question is, does the city want to continue to offset the residential billing by paying 39 cents per residential dwelling per month? That's the first question.
So I had a vague recollection that the existing subsidy that the city provides is the division of some grant across all households in the city. Is that verified? Did you manage to confirm that that was true or not true?
So I believe that's correct. Alicia and I weren't able to talk about that after you and I spoke because she wasn't in. But it's important to note that we are using those dollars that we've received from the county in order to offset our costs for organics recycling so that we are not charging residents for that. That's how we're using those dollars at this time.
And that uses all of them?
I don't know what the balance is off the top of my head, and we weren't able to check that. I apologize.
So what I would suggest is that we determine that and then subsidize in the same way, dividing whatever remains by the number of households.
Only in the matter of if we have a grant.
Right,
That-
the score grant or the
It's score funding.
score funding, sorry.
But that's different than is that different than the recycling? So,
The score grant is just for organics.
yeah, so,
Yeah,
but, and don't we have how much is that organic recycling thing we have here?
So the score grant covers the organics recycling, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
No, I know, but if you're taking money from the score grant for organics recycling, if we have additional, you're saying to apply it to the regular?
I don't know that it can be.
Sure. we can.
Yeah.
The county has requirements around what you can use the score funding for. And
So what is the existing grant that we're using to provide the subsidy?
I thought it was the score grant, so I'm mistaken in that. We weren't able to talk about it today.
we can look into it. I'm not aware of any grant right now.
Okay.
We can get back to you.
I don't think we should, as a council, subsidize fees for other non-city related functions. So if there's some other entity providing a service, I don't think we should subsidize that across the city out of the budget. I'm just gonna say that if you're looking for direction.
And to clarify, from Councilmember Nichols, we will verify how that, 39 cents was paid for 2024. If we're able to continue that, and distribute whatever that balance is from that source, direction is for us to continue that. If that's no longer a source, then I'm understanding that we're not wanting to use levy dollars in order to
Correct.
replace that. Yeah.
I don't think score is limited just to organics. I think it's for recycling as well.
Yeah, I think if you could bring that back and we get clarity on that, then we can.
So moving forward, since we do have the contract, that would be my question is, do you need us to bring it back or to bring it back with an update? Because of the dollar value and the timeline, if there's funding available, staff can move with the direction that you provided us to distribute that. We need to communicate that, whatever that's going to be. But we need to make a decision in terms of our contract with Republic right away.
Yeah, my direction would be to proceed, and then if there's dollars available from the grants that we already get that can be applied as a subsidy, we should do that. But correct, if there's no funding for that, we shouldn't use those dollars for it.
The second thing the council should consider is the contract renewal terms will be for 3 years with a 5% annual increase. Republic Services could consider a 4 or 5 year term, but however, due to timing, they are open to 1 year renewal at this point.
Yeah, I would say we should just do the 1 year renewal, because the last time this was renewed was in the middle of COVID supply chain disruption and we
No
didn't
one else
receive
bid
any
on
other
it,
bids.
yeah.
Because nobody could make enough cans.
Bins.
So I think we should go out for bid next year, but I'm fine with a 1-year extension to give us the time to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. You all good with that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Then we are on to planning items. We have a public hearing first, and then we'll go on to a concept plan. Let's go ahead and dive into the public hearing. I will go ahead and open that.
Is this for both or just the?
This is for 9A for the evening vacation. Ida key.
Can I make a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
on to the item itself.
May I make a motion to approve the ID or the
Resolution.
the resolution 2024-119 approving the easement vacation?
Do we have a second?
I will
Second.
second that.
Landry got it. He beat you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then on to 9B, which is a concept plan review of Chastic property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a, concept plan that was applied for by Trek Real Estate Development and Household Real Estate doing business as Emerald Rose LLC. This is for the property located at 7600 Maple Hill Road. And it's important just to, off the bat, to remind the council that right now, the land use designation in our 2040 comprehensive plan is low density residential for the site, which requires density at 3 to 5 units per acre. And the existing zoning district for the site is RSF2, which was one of our single family zoning districts. The concept plan is for 103 single family homes under the RSF3 zoning standards. It's on roughly 38 acres located northeast of the County Road 10 and Maple Hill Road intersection. So this is just the visual of the concept plan. I do want to note that it does include the trail here, look at my laser pointer. It does include the trail on the on the north end of the site. And that is in our 2040 comprehensive plan, so that is in compliance. And then it connects roughly to where the landing point is on the east side for the approved development at Fairway Shores. So I'm just gonna go over the main discussion points. In most areas, the applicant is committed to complying to the standards in our city code as written. So there's really 3 discussion items that staff identified. First being is the concept plan shows the development per RSF3 standards, which would require a rezoning application from the current RSF2 zoning district. There's not a lot of difference between the 2 districts. The setbacks are the same. The maximum principal building height is the same. The primary differences is the minimum lot area in RSF2 is 11,000 square feet, whereas RSF3 that's 7,500 square feet. And then the minimum lot width is 80 feet for RSF2, whereas RSF3 is 65 feet wide lots as the minimum size. So all their district standards are the same, and so there should be some discussion tonight to help guide applicants.
Sorry to interrupt. Does that include, isn't there a difference in the 2 between allowable units in terms of like townhomes? Or they?
Yes, there is a use, so this is more about the lot configuration,
Okay.
but you are correct, there is a use change in that RSF3 theoretically allows for townhomes. They are not proposing townhomes, they're proposing 103 single family units for this development, but that is correct in terms of the use table for the district.
Is there a do we make motions on this or is this in front?
This is just a concept.
Yeah, so this is feedback on a concept. So the next be a concept plan and then the preliminary and then the final, or is it?
This is the concept plan.
Okay, and then, okay,
Yep, so
And
the
then-
next application would be rezoning and preliminary plat.
so we are gonna do the preliminary plat. How far did we get on this? Did we get the final plat before?
Preliminary.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to know if we could skip one of the steps, if this is the only difference, but it sounds like we didn't get that far. So we're good. And question answered, thank you.
Natalie, I'm sorry, if I could ask. It appears to me that this plan is inconsistent with the prior application with respect to net acreage. Can you tell me what the reason is for that?
The gross acreage is about 38, net acreage. I did talk about that in the staff report. That it doesn't look like they included floodplain when they initially provided the concept plan. Once we include the floodplain in there, then the net acreage should be the same. So I think it was just a difference in who designed the sign, and they just designed the concept plan. And so they just didn't realize that we also include floodplain when we talk about net acreage. So that would be something that I identified that would need to be confirmed with the preliminary application.
Okay, because if I understand it correctly, the applicant has us a hair under 3.
No, it's a hair above 3 right now. It's
That's what
okay.
That's what the applicant is saying. It's a hair.
Yeah, so the
above?
applicant's formula for density, and this might. So I was about to go into density on the next slide, but yeah, so the applicant's formula for density on the concept plan was just under 3 units an acre. But when I went back and just kind of confirmed, because I thought that the net acreage didn't look quite right, and realized that they didn't include the floodplain in that equation. Once you include that, that's how we're getting to the 3.07 units, which is just above the 3 units an acre required for low density residential.
Okay, so you're in agreement with the applicant that we're above 3.
At this time, we have a preliminary estimate of 3.07 units an acre, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But I do think that's an important distinction because of it determines whether or not there's a whole nother step in evaluation required.
Yeah, and that's one of the discussion items, because typically we see it go up when we have our preliminary estimate to a more finalized estimate. You typically see it go up. I'm a little uncertain whether or not that's going to be the case here, because there's a number of wetlands being filled in. And so once we remove those wetlands, the final calculation wouldn't include that. So I'm a little concerned with how close we are that it could come back lower, particularly if we have to remove any units to meet engineering requirements. So I do think it's worth tonight to have a discussion on, if the preliminary plat application comes back under 3 units an acre, how should staff guide the applicant to proceed? The options I outlined in the staff report were the comprehensive plan amendment to conservation residential to allow density of 2 to 3 units per acre. The concern here being there is not a lot of existing natural resources on the site unless we're talking about drainage patterns and saying that water is the natural resource. I think that may be a stretch, but you can tell me whether or not you disagree with that.
I also throw this out there. I would not be supportive of going to the conservation district.
But then the next
requirements that we set.
The next thing to then consider to help deal with the conflict that we're having with the zoning district and the land use designation is looking at our zoning ordinance. Doing some kind of amendment, either to allow a smaller lot width or a lot area in the RSF3, or establish a new zoning district that has those lower lot sizes. That would be another way to get to a district that allows for 3 units an acre safely. I would say so far, our experience with RSF3 is theoretically it should work, but once you're dealing with the natural resources on the site and the way that you're dealing with the patterns, you're working around a wetland, there's an exception piece here that you have that which limits what you can do, so it's not as clean as you want it to be. It's difficult to hit that 3 units an acre. Woodland Hills is the only other RSF3 plat that we've approved, and that one came at about 2.6 units an acre, if I recall. It was definitely well under 3. Go ahead, sorry.
Could they deal with their lack of buildable area by using twin homes? They're a conditional use in RSF3, and you should be able to get more units per linear foot of buildable road area.
It's gonna be a question for the applicant. I think While twin homes are allowed use, sometimes the builders don't necessarily have a twin home model. Not that they can't create one, not that they can't talk to a builder that's interested. It's just one of those products that not everybody makes, so it's not as common these days. You do have the larger national builders that, like, Lennar, for example, that does have a twin home model that they're able to use for sites, but with the size of this site, I don't think that Lennar would be in the market for this development. But I think they could go ahead and speak to that further.
Okay, can you go up to the mic?
Yeah, if you'd come up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council for having us back. We're not opposed to building twin homes. I think what the zoning code requires that the lot size doubles. So it goes from 7,500 to 15,000 square foot. That's for page 97 of your zoning requirements.
Could
So
you
it doesn't
please-
really help us get more lots.
Could you please state your name so that we?
Oh,
can-
sorry, Ben Kriznak with Hempel Real Estate.
The width goes up by less than double, but I take your point on the overall area. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think for the most part, we're pretty close to the 7,500.
So Natalie, when you, sorry to cut you off, when you mentioned the rezoning, you could say up if you have more, I just really brief. When you mentioned there, so there's a decision on, support or at least feedback on support of rezoning and potentially of changing that zoning district standards. Has there been something thrown out as
No,
to what?
This is me throwing out ideas on how to solve a solution or how to reach a solution. So I would say we could go about a couple different ways. We could look at our SF3 and just lower those standards down a bit. See what it looks like at 60 feet. We can work with the applicant to see, does that get us a little bit closer, especially as they finalize their plans. And then we could, so that could certainly be a situation, or we could look at creating a new zoning district again. Maybe it's 55-foot wide lots, maybe 60-foot wide lots. I don't know exactly right now. That would definitely could be some of the feedback we get tonight, but we'd be open to exploring. I'll just say that, I think that in situations like this, where there's not a lot of natural resources, but there's still reasons why we're not hitting that 3 units an acre, it may make sense to look at our zoning district standards to figure out what we can do to get to 3 units an acre in those areas that are guided for low density.
Do we have any other areas in the city that we are committed to then being RSF3 currently? So if we.
No.
Okay,
No, I don't believe so. I think everything is zoned RSF2.
Okay.
To my understanding, besides Woodland Hills, which is already,
Right.
yeah.
Can I just add something quickly?
have Mark and then.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I want to say that I support this concept plan in principle. I think my only concern here is that there seems to be there's almost numbers at odds here. I believe the applicant stated the calculation is 2.8 units an acre, which is below where I think we need to be. And I think you said that we're just above 3. I'm concerned about giving the applicant further feedback. If I don't know which number I can rely on, it's almost as though we don't have solid density numbers to base decisions on. I mean, I think, if it wasn't for the Met Council, I would tell the applicant, great application. But we have to deal with these standards that are being forced on us by the Met Council. And it's difficult for me to give advice, not knowing, is it 2.8 like the applicant has in the plan, or is it 3.07, like you said? What do we have to do to get an actual number before we give guidance?
So the actual number for the preliminary estimate, which is usually what we have at this stage, is 3.07. I can say that with confidence. I want that confirmed. My concern is when we get to the Met Council formula, which we don't know until we've done the engineered plans. that is where we're gonna see it potentially go under the 3, or it could be more than 3.07. Typically, it goes up. I just think in this situation, we are removing a number of wetlands on the site. And then I don't know how the engineering requirements might, like in this situation, if they lose 3 lots at 3.07, if they lose 3 lots, by the information I have today, they're under 3 units an acre. So that's not a lot of wiggle room, and so it'd just be helpful to understand when I'm working with them to finalize the preliminary plat. If we come up into that situation, what would be the preferred way for the application to proceed at that point? So it's, what I'm hearing is potentially more of a zoning ordinance amendment more than a comp plan amendment at that point.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant to do a comp plan amendment because I don't think it meets the requirements of that additional district we've created, and I'm hesitant to add a lot of new area into that right now when Met Council seems to be going in the opposite direction of saying, oh, wait, you might actually have 4 units per acre as a requirement. So I guess, yeah, that's where I would sit on that right now. And hold on, I want to make sure that the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so the issue we're having is the comp plan is requiring 3 units per acre.
Mhm.
And so we're just trying to make the zoning match into that, match into your comp plan, and just you can't make. I mean, RSF2 doesn't work because it has 11,000 square foot lots, and you just can't map that out. Let's just put roads on there, making that work. And so we're kind of stuck in this conundrum where it's like, well, Met Council won't approve that, and the city says we don't want to do this, and we have a property that has no.
Well, and I think, and if I don't want to speak for the rest of the council, but I think maybe there's been some openness to potentially looking at the rezoning aspect of it, of the RSF 2 to 3, or 2 clearly doesn't work with the.
If I may, I got a question.
Mhm.
I remember hydraulic corridor out of this. I remember a lot of good things on the previous plan. What was the number on the previous plan, units per acre?
So it was about 3.22 was the estimate I had at the end of that.
But was that also changing the zoning
It was a
Changing the
PUD.
zoning to a PUD.
to a PUD?
And they're trying to come in under a straight flat, because that was. part
I
of their
understand,
original.
I understand and appreciate the design change and such like that, so I got it, thank you. And again, you still have the hydraulic corridor? Is that what you called it? Yep,
Yeah, it won't be viewable the way that the previous one was.
yeah, it's changed a lot, but I appreciate the 2 entrances on the west side and then the one staying in the north, in the southeast side and everything else. I got it, thanks.
So, I feel like, is there any more comments you want on this, or was the last item discussion?
Go, I want to make sure that you did you have,
No, we're here to listen.
Okay.
Answer.
Mark?
I have one final question. I guess I'm just wondering if it would make sense to table this until we had solid density numbers.
Those are as solid as you get until you have fully engineered
Until,
plans, which is a
yeah,
preliminary
full in,
plat application.
All in.
Okay.
and I think it's it's not, I think the difference isn't that much more than normal, it's that it falls, and that if it was 3.22 to 3.1, we wouldn't be as concerned because it goes above and under that 3.
How many significant figures are in the requirement?
Hmm?
How many significant figures are in the requirement? Is it 3 or is it 3.0?
Oh,
I'm only slightly kidding because this is a real thing.
I would say if it's 2.9999, we're under 3, so we need to hit 3.00.
3.01.
They don't acknowledge rounding rules like the FDA
I
does.
think we could probably round up if it's 2 point, but I don't think it's gonna be that close. If we lose 3 lots, it's like 2.97, so they're not gonna round up to 3. But typically, in my experience, they'll go out to the 100.
Now, since you mentioned losing lots, I know in the original application, public safety chimed in, and I think there was mention of a cul-de-sac or something like that.
Yeah, that was.
Do we anticipate that the applicant would lose another lot for a cul-de-sac, or has public safety backed out of the whole cul-de-sac?
I do have another slide where we talk about the road.
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay.
So so then part of this application, some of the differences is there, we have the entrance that was previously shown, that's about midway up on the site on Maple Hill Road. And then there is another access shown, full access onto Maple Hill Road on the northern end, in addition to the two accesses to the east to connect to Fairway Shores, which gets you to Fur Lane. The issue with this northern access is there's three concerns that are coming up. It does not comply with the road network that the city has in our Southeast District Plan, which is right here. So it creates a conflict with the spacing that would be established on the west side. Additionally, it creates a conflict with two existing driveways for the church on the west side of Maple Hill that exists today. So this road is offset from an existing driveway access. And then also in the middle, or not quite in the middle, but there's also one over here. And so the spacing is a bit concerning. And then it also, Maple Hill Road is designated to be a connector street. So the space between this access as well as the northern access, it doesn't meet our spacing guidelines for our engineering standards. So the staff recommendation is that this northern street should have a turnaround and then if it's deemed necessary, an emergency access could be provided as a compromise without creating those conflicts to the west. And further, just wanting to note that the extent and details of road improvements serving the development, including Maple Hill Road, would be further reviewed as the development moves forward. That's the last main discussion point to discuss.
Is there a secondary access at the southeast corner?
Yes.
They'll have two regardless.
We'll have three. They have three.
Four with this.
This one's 4. It just creates a number of conflicts.
What would happen if they got rid of one of the accesses on the west side?
They got rid of the north access, it would function. It would function if the main concern is that we have at least 2. That's not a standard, that's more of a public safety, making sure that we have flow through the development, and we're getting 3. So we have the 2 points to line up with Fairway Shores to the east, and those are set. And then we have the one on Maple Hill. So they would have multiple ways in and out of the development with connecting to Fur Lane. And then I think we could look at an emergency access in that northern area, so emergency access could still get in as well. So it would more than function and it would be safe.
And if that were changed to a cul-de-sac, what we're talking about potentially losing
Yes,
one lot,
and then they'll potentially lose 1 to 2 lots right there.
but probably not more than that.
We would have to look at it. I can't imagine it being more than 2,
But yet be an emergency access.
we could look at emergency access, yes.
Just,
Oh, would you need an emergency access there if you've got 3 other entrances?
I don't believe that we would need it because the previous design had more homes and it had 3, and we were saying that we would need it if Fur Lane wasn't connected day 1. But if Fur Lane was connected day 1, we don't need that.
all right,
I don't expect that feedback to change from public safety, but I'm not public safety, so I'd have to come back with that conversation.
All right. There.
I won't be on city council, but
Your opinion is still valued.
I don't have one.
Fair enough. Additional questions you have for us?
I guess if we go to the cul-de-sac, we're gonna lose 2 lots, then we're definitely under 3 units per acre.
But the 3.07, once we hit 3 lots, that's when you're under 3. So again, that's again
Close.
partly why I wanted to have that conversation is what do we do if we're right on the cusp? And so I think we got the feedback that the preferred way to handle that would be looking at potentially a zoning ordinance amendment that reduces the lot width to maybe get you closer to that 3 and make it up elsewhere.
how far off is that northern road to the church?
Here, I
How
can,
staggered is that?
yeah, I wish I had a better zoom in. Let me see if I can get a better zoom in for you.
It's like it's maybe 30 feet.
It's, I mean, here, I'll try to.
It's also super close to the entrance to Maple Hill.
I
Yeah.
know that, I'm
It's not really
just,
shown on there, but Maple Hill's just north of there too. So it's on both sides of the road.
yeah, it just the church, obviously the parking lot can't move and their driveways can't move and the church isn't moving. It just, I wanted to just,
Yeah, so
in my mind, what is it?
Counselor Camp, this might be a little, oh,
It's a very pretty picture. I like that.
oh yeah.
It's on a water tower
I
somewhere.
try to make.
That's a rendering of the development, right?
So, but is it not, I don't know how to get this. to zoom in.
You're on BenQ. I don't know.
I know, here, 1 second. I'm gonna make a quick snapshot and put it into my PowerPoint.
I'll do some tap dancing. Has anybody seen the new pictures on the water tower, the new logo?
I
Turned out pretty okay. Turned out pretty darn good.
Send that picture to Alan.
Yeah.
I saw the other day, there was a Facebook comment on our page from Alan on it,
Okay.
but it was just like a.
What did he say?
I totally missed that opportunity. to
I
text
think he
it.
liked it.
And I texted it to everyone else. How did I fail?
I did that pretty quick. I'm pretty proud of myself. Okay, so here is.
Got it.
The
Thank you.
road, and then this is the driveway, so with the church. It's not great. We would not
I
recommend it.
understand. But again, my concern on public safety and stuff, a cul-de-sac and the numbers, that's stuff y'all gotta work out, but a cul-de-sac, but yet with a knockdown barrier for emergency access and stuff
If it's
was
needed.
one of my biggest things, so.
So yeah, I think there's generally more support of. I mean, ideally coming in at that 3 and not having to adjust it, but I think there's a lot of hesitancy about going to a lower. Or density district. But potentially some interest or some, okay, acceptance, I guess, of. Changing the zoning to RSF3. I'd prefer not to change the zoning district, but if it's something that we think more broadly, we need to look at tweaking a little bit, I think there'd be openness to looking at it. I would be hesitant to commit to a specific number now, but.
Right. I think that's fair. I think we would, I think as staff and the applicant work, we can figure out what that number would be and bring that back.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is feasible or not. Could you bring up the larger plat that shows all of the lots? So I don't know if this is feasible. I'll throw it out as an idea. The two lots up in the upper left. What would happen if instead of having this road connect, and instead of having a cul-de-sac, could this become like a twin home lot and have a driveway access off of the end and not have to lose a lot?
They have to have frontage and they have to meet the minimum frontage. So that'd be a variance and they're trying to avoid any variance. So, if that's the preferred route, that'd be helpful to know now. And then I would say the other thing to keep in mind, if it's like a private drive serving 2 twin homes, that might also, I'd have to look at how that fits within our standards as well. There's 2. Yeah, like that was gonna be one of the PUD flexibilities, was because we only allow private drives in the MUSA for twin homes specifically. So that was gonna be, I think there was one instance in the previous application, not in the final version, but when there was a private drive, it was gonna be a PUD flexibility. And so again, we're trying to avoid any deviation.
I guess I'd be hesitant to push them entirely towards looking at more twin or townhomes or looking at townhomes. But if it's the
Townhomes
issue,
aren't allowed in.
they are in RSF
They're not.
3.
They're not.
No, it's just twin homes in the RSF3.
Okay, good.
That came up on my plan.
Good deal. Well, I'd still be a little hesitant on the pushing them towards twin homes, but I would say if it comes down to like one variance access thing needed to either meet or not meet the density, I think I'd be supportive of finding a way to make, I wouldn't want the one lot access situation to make it or not, or make it or break it for the whole development. I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Yep, I agree.
So that's the bailout option if the density doesn't get hit.
Would be to, what do you mean?
Allow that as a variance.
Oh, well, I mean, it would, yeah, I guess it would be dependent on the facts, but I would be supportive of trying to find a
Some kind
solution.
of private drive.
If it's just that on a lot or two in that corner there to make it work, or it's not gonna work at all, I'd be generally supportive of trying to find a way to make that work, whether it's a variance on that lot or, I mean, it's gonna be dependent on the facts. But I wouldn't want to have that hold up the entire rest of the development. That makes sense.
I just had another question. So I guess if we take, what is that, lot 10 and 12 there, you're saying put a townhome?
Or
there? A single family. Lots 12, 13, 14 though, will need to have some sort of turnaround access, right? You wanna still have some sort of cul-de-sac there. Are you saying that all those lots would be on a,
And I think even with a private,
On a
you
private
still need
drive.
some type of turnaround, so I don't know if it
Yeah.
exactly solves it, I think it's just they're trying
so
to.
I just wanna make sure, like, it seems like we're creating a new problem with.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 3 different standards, but I think that would, you might not be able to fit it all north with that exception parcel.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess I would lean more towards if you had to cut. If you had to cut out a lot. We think that a lot can. Work at least in terms of density. As opposed to having to. Cut out the 5 or 6 there, like with a turnout, I would say that there's probably an engineered solution that could be figured out. Whether it's punching that through or having a turnaround and having to figure out that one corner lot, but I don't know that it needs to expand all the way down to that lot 14.
yeah, I hope not, excuse me, I think that that's helpful feedback, if maybe it's not necessarily the private drive, maybe that's a variance if there is one smaller lot in order to kind of. keep the
Right,
lots
that's,
up.
that,
Maybe
right,
that's another option, if
that's
we're
what I'm
all-
trying to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other feedback? Any other questions?
Good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Good deal. With that, we will move on to. Let's see, our council reports. I don't have too much. I was out of town this week. In Guam, so that was an experience.
How was your trip?
It was awful, but thanks for asking. I would not recommend flying Atlanta to Seoul, South Korea in a middle seat, but that's just me.
That'll see.
I had a very nice older Korean lady who was sitting next to me that made it pleasant on the way there, but was not as fun on the way back. But yeah, it was an experience. And yeah, other than that, any other council reports? Okay. Then with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion, second, third.
Deb, you gotta figure that out, but. We'll give you all the leeway to pick whoever you want of the 4 of them. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.